good evening, kids. How is everybody doing? Welcome to a special presentation of The Abyss Democrat Debate number 10. Ooh. The circus continues. I'm your host, The Eternal Abyss. Welcome, everyone here at Bitwave, DLive, YouTube, Periscope, and lest I forget, Twitch, since we're trying that out as well. Welcome. Yes, sir, Soldat. This is the Debate Dumpster Fire stream. Yes, sir. Let's see. Troll has provided a link here. Have you seen the latest cancellations? They really are eating themselves. Cancellations. Let's see. Bernie Stafford mocked Warren's looks, Pete's sexuality on private Twitter account. I had heard about that. Yes. I had heard that someone had used their private account to like attack everybody else that's not Bernie, essentially, and they were not only attacking the other candidates, they were attacking also all their supporters. It was a mess from what I hear. Yes. My plants? I don't know what you're talking about. I don't have plants. I have 3 plants and they're made of plastic. That's all I got. You know? But stream, the debate, to my understanding, is going to start at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So we have a little bit of time. I don't have plants. I don't know what you're talking about. What are plants? Plants? I don't know. I don't have a picture of them, and I'm not going to turn on any cams. I'm not going to dox myself accidentally. Chat is asking me for my plants. I don't have plants. I really don't. I'll have someone else do a plant stream. I don't do plants. I'm afraid I just don't. Let's see, I got another link from Bitwave chat. Let's see what this is. North Korea quarantine 1,300 coronavirus patients in Pyongyang hotel. Ho ho. It's reached the better Korea. Goodness me. Goodness me. Yeah, the whole coronavirus thing is a very interesting topic. The Bloomberg, I don't know. You know, Bloomberg is doing enough damage on his own without any help from his staff. I don't know what you're talking about when it comes to plants. The Bitwave chat keeps asking me for plants. I don't have plants. I said I only have these 3 little dinky plastic ones for decoration, and they probably are dusty. How am I supposed to show plants? I can't turn my camera on. I don't know. Hold on. Maybe I can take a picture. I don't have real plants. I only have fake ones. Yeah, Jim Kleinberg, they're speaking ahead right now, ahead of the debate. I'm not gonna put that on. I'm interested in only the debate itself. Hold on, this thing is kind of too loud in my head. There we go. Well, I don't have plans to show. Maybe Thursday I have my regular stream, and I also have an announcement for Thursday. I'm gonna save that for the announcements for that stream. Um, you're leaving, Ellie. Aw, bye bye, Ellie. I'm sorry I couldn't hear your stream. I'll show plants in the next stream on Thursday. How about that? Would that make chat happy? Jim is still streaming. Tell him that I'm streaming, and Mom Patch said that anybody who's streaming when I'm streaming is a faggot. Mom Patch said so. I mean, come on. Tell Jim he has to get on track with Mom Patch here. I mean, this isn't working. Yeah, I missed Ellie's stream. Yeah, I know. Womp womp. Is he dispatch? I wasn't aware. So I'm interacting a lot with chat for those that aren't on bitwave.tv. You can join up, see the chat, see what's going on, see it on my screen right now. But please interact in the other chats as well. I have them all hooked in. I don't have it on screen, but I do see chats from other platforms like Periscope, YouTube, Twitch, etc. So I welcome everyone to come and interact and have some fun here, because we're gonna have to suffer through this debate anyways. We might as well have some fun with it. Oh, really? Here's a tweet that came up. There's an unconfirmed report from Iran that the former mayor of Tehran, Mohammed Bagher Ghalibaf, has tested positive for the coronavirus. Reports from at Ravina Ujmaya states that he had met with the supreme leader of Iran just a few days ago. Holy cow. Can you imagine the supreme leader getting coronavirus? That would basically resolve a pretty big problem for the United States, really. Amazing. Amazing. Yeah, this whole, in fact, that's why I added the Corona Chan little animation on my screen here, because this is the big thing. I was gonna put a like live counter of death toll, but I think that'd be a little bit of a downer. Maybe a little bit. So yeah, and for those that are, have been enjoying the alley, I'm afraid there'll be no alleys in this stream. So like crackhead alleys, we're pretty much out of that. So I can't promise much when it comes to crack alley entertainment. Uh, no, negative on both, dispatch. By windows, maybe like computer windows, you mean? Actual like building windows? No. No plants. No. I'm sorry. We are devoid of plants in this stream. I can bring up some, you know what? Hold on. Let me see. I'll see what I can do here. Let me try something. Hopefully I won't break everything. See, you guys make me try and do stuff while I'm streaming, and now things aren't even behaving. Oh, there we go. Yeah, now I have like 20 windows open. Hold up. Don't mind the clicky click clicks here. Here, don't ever say I did not. Don't ever say I don't do things to make chat happy. Here we go. Here you go. You guys will love this. Hold on. Oh, wait. This is even better. Oh, I found an even better one. Hold on. Hold up. We're gonna go green on my channel here. We're gonna go green in just a moment here. I tell you what, as they say in Texas. Whoops, I did not mean to do that. Let's see, just give me one moment here. This will be ready in just a minute. Okay. Where did that... Huh? Where did that go? Weird. Hold on. Where the heck did that go? Hold on. Unreal. Oh my god. Just not behaving at all here. Yeah, there we go. The hell is that format? I've never seen that. Hold on, this thing is really confusing me. Oh, this is terrible. No, 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 this will not do. This will not do. I'm sorry, kids. Things aren't working out for the plants. I'm trying. I'm really, really trying here. You gotta give me credit. We're gonna give it another try here. 1 second. I will get some plants up here, and I got a great picture here for that. It just has to, all the planets need to align to make sure that this works, apparently. Loading, loading, loading. Loading, loading, loading. Away. Loading. There we go. Okie doke. Now I think I got the right version of this. Okay. We're going to bring that down. We're going to bring this up. Let's see here. All right. How's that for plants, chat? How are we doing? There we go. I have brought plants. No, no, no. I never promised Venus flytraps. Negatory. Nope. I only said I'd try to get plants up in this joint, and I got some plants. There we go. Yeah, so anyways, as we can see here, they're making preparations still before everything gets started. Um, while we're waiting for the debate to start, and I've been just messing around here with chat a little bit. Um, I believe it's in Columbus. I think it's Ohio. I think it is in Ohio, Columbus, Ohio. They're making preparations. And one of the big news of the day, though, that I want to kind of talk about since we're waiting, was this amazing trip that happened with Trump in India. He received an amazingly warm welcome, beautifully warm welcome, and well, this is South Carolina, Columbus. I don't know. I really don't know. I've lost track, honestly. I've honestly lost track because they've done so many of these debates. I have no idea where it's at, so I could be absolutely wrong. So, um, the welcome that I saw in India was amazing because the media is trying to push this narrative of everybody hates Trump. The world doesn't respect Trump. The world doesn't respect the United States anymore. And if you saw what happened in India, is the absolute opposite. People were overjoyed to see Trump. People were overjoyed to see the good relationship between India and the United States. You had people wearing MAGA hats, Trump hats. You had people. Modi did a rally for Trump, and there were 100,000 people at this rally, and everybody was wearing hats. And the thing that really kind of touched me when I saw this was that they played the national anthem. They asked people to rise for the United States national anthem, and you had people from a foreign land rise up to honor the United States national anthem. I tweeted about this and I said it's an utterly beautiful thing, but it's an utterly painful thing to watch as well. Because you have a land of foreigners that have enough respect for your country to rise to the national anthem, when people instead in your own country are spitting on the flag, stepping on the flag, setting it on fire, spitting on everything that is America, and desecrating the flag, and also just like spitting on the graves and on the blood that's been spilt for this country. Just completely not respecting the memory of these people that paid the ultimate price, made the ultimate sacrifice for our freedoms. It's amazing. Frankly, it's amazing to me. It really is. Oh, we have him on stage now, so I think I will raise the volume at this point. I won't put it all the way up.
Untouched, unbothered, unscorched through this process, and he is the Democratic
Steyer?
If you do math, if you count delegates.
Wow, Steyer is still on the stage. Okay.
So I would look for the intensity of the attacks.
I don't think that I didn't realize that Steyer was still gonna be there, or even. Jeez, look what an idiot. God. What a spaz. What a spaz.
And this is the only debate before Super Tuesday.
Leslie, what about you?
I didn't say they were mine, Spoobs. I said I'd provide some plants. He's polling third in South Carolina? Really? Huh. Booty gig. Yeah, booty gay. Butt gig. The butt gig guy. Yeah, let's turn it up and let's listen in.
But the severity of those jabs.
What about you, Linda?
For me, it's all about Joe Biden, and he has made it all about himself. This is South Carolina. This is the moment we've all been waiting for to see if he really does have the overwhelming support of black voters in this community, which we think would be predictive of the kind of support he would have around the country. And it's honestly really do or die for him.
Molly?
Ditto.
Yeah.
Ditto with all these
Yeah.
states, but particularly Joe Biden, because this really...
It's turned up. Be patient, people. There's a slight delay.
Ones, but really in terms of differentiate himself from the other candidates, he hasn't gone there. And at this point, he hasn't won any of the first three contests. It's time for him to go there. And what that looks like, we'll have to see tonight.
Linda, I want to ask you about some political news that's just developing. So the Buttigieg campaign just put out this memo outlining what they see as their path to the nomination. They say their goal is, quote, to minimize Sanders' margins on Super Tuesday and rack up delegates in the March 10th and March 17th contests, which are much more favorable to us. What does that tell you about their expectations for South Carolina and Super Tuesday?
It tells you a lot about both South Carolina and Super Tuesday, specifically that they're setting expectations that they're not going to do that well. I was wondering when one of these campaigns was
let me take a
essentially
look
going
at
to
chat
reveal
and
their
see.
snapshot, their pathway to victory, because every single presidential campaign does this incessantly.
Yeah.
You know, the calculation of the numbers, if we just go up by 2 points with this demographic group or down 5 points with this other demographic group, how does that look? Do we actually have a pathway to victory? This is what we mean when we say that. And so what they're telling us is they've crunched the numbers and their best and brightest hopes are further along. We also saw that they just put out
What
a
wall?
fundraising.
What wall are we talking about?
We need $13 million to keep going. And it struck me because typically best practice when you're doing online organizing is not to put out a gigantic number. It's the smaller number. It's so easy. Just open your wallet and give me $5, $25. And so this is a moment.
You mean Trump's wall is being built?
Write 13 checks, which were for $1 million. I think.
I mean, but it can't be good. I mean,
It's not a good sign. No.
yeah, yeah.
It's also a setting of expectations and a real, I guess, free flirtation towards what could be an obvious. We all know Mayor Pete has had struggles with African American voters. In South Carolina, 61% of the people who cast their vote look like me, Leslie. 55% women. Most of the states that follow South Carolina are going to have similar demographics. And so if South Carolina is a flirtation of what's to come, then Mayor Pete knows he's in trouble. And so now the game is to underpromise and perhaps overdeliver.
Antoine, let me keep it with you for just a moment. With former Vice President Biden, what really is the challenge for him on that debate stage tonight in a place where, as you have said time and time again, he enjoys such a close connection with African-American voters here? Nevertheless, as Anthony Salvanto said in our last segment, if you look at the...
I got to make a slight adjustment to the size of the stream here for the debate, so please stand by while I move some stuff around. It shouldn't affect audio or video, but just want to make you guys aware.
So what does he need to do up there?
If I were speaking to the VP right now, before this debate, I would tell him, block out the noise and focus on the lyrics. The noise would tell you the campaign is in trouble, your own life support is do or die in South Carolina. That's partly true. But focus on the lyrics. Focus on the things you know. The one thing we know, as someone who's from South Carolina, as someone who did 3 presidential campaigns here, people trust and know Joe Biden, and Joe Biden trust and know South Carolina. I think that's going to pay long and short-term dividends for him, Molly, because this election for African-American voters is going to be a trust election, particularly as we go on to not just South Carolina, but Super Tuesday. And these are all states where Joe Biden has deep and wide relationships that he's cultivated and developed over the years.
Well, if you look at the members of Congress who are actually endorsing these candidates, Joe Biden has
I'm
more
just trying to
members
provide
of
a
the
better
CPC
experience.
than any of the other candidates. In fact,
I'm just trying to provide a better experience for my viewers. And I'm glad I haven't boomered anything up just yet.
are sitting senators. So I think that says a lot.
Linda, let me ask you about Senator Sanders. Coming off Nevada especially, what kinds of attacks is he likely to face tonight, and how you prepare for that if you are coming at this from a Senator Sanders perspective as the Democratic socialist on that stage?
Well, I think that Senator Sanders and his team realize that the time has come. And as front runner, he's got a massive target on him, and he's got to be prepared to take on those questions, shall we put it, in particular about paying for Medicare for all. He's gotten such a pass on this in a way that Elizabeth Warren, for example, definitely has not. And we know that they're worried about this because they just put out some analysis of their own just yesterday saying that it's going to cost $30 trillion over the next decade to pay for his plan. And then they did what they called a checklist of how they were going to bring in revenue to offset that cost. Yet,
well, I could probably put the plant background up again if that helps. I don't know.
It's Andrew
Math
Yang's
becomes
thing,
a
yeah,
problem,
right.
exactly. Hashtag math.
Yes.
So yeah, that's certainly something. And of course, this kind of explosive interview that happened on 60 Minutes with Anderson Cooper and him saying nice things about Fidel Castro, that is going to be an ongoing anchor, basically, a drag on him moving forward, assuming he does well otherwise, because Floridians
okay.
are not going to take that kind of
Yeah.
Let's talk about this Fidel Castro thing for a moment. Obama did the same thing. Obama chummed up Fidel Castro. He chummed up that regime. He opened up relations with them, and all these pundits and reporters and journalists, they didn't have a cow about it back then. But now all of a sudden, because it's Bernie Sanders, and rightfully so, mind you, don't get me wrong. It's not incorrect to criticize him for this. I'm just saying, however, that it is highly, highly, highly hypocritical of these journos now and reporters to say, "Oh, Bernie's a freaking socialist. He said horrible things. He's going to have a target on his back," when their Lord and Savior, Messiah, that they continually licked his ass, he somehow could never do anything wrong, though. Give me a break. That's ridiculous. Anyways, let's go back to the commentary here.
It really doesn't matter when you're talking about embracing Fidel Castro, and that is really going to be used in campaign ads. We will continue to hear about
It's a
that
vulnerability,
and that's
yeah.
it's just done in terms of Florida.
One Florida member of Congress told me, well, the Republicans just won Florida if Bernie Sanders is the candidate.
You want to say something, Antoine?
Yeah, well, I think all of the candidates have to keep in mind whatever you say and do will be used against you in the court of
Public
campaign
opinion.
elections and public opinion
Yeah.
in the fall. And so the things they stay on the debate stage now, you made this wonderful reference of the first debate and some of the rhetoric we saw. All those things are going to turn into right-wing, red meat talking points for the other side. And here's the test for Bernie Sanders tonight. He's gotten a pass to the point. No one's defined him on the stage for the most part. But as you get farther south, we are a little more pragmatic in our approach in our politics. I can speak from an African American on this platform right here today. We've always been bold, but we've never been somewhat progressive. And I think the challenge for him, branding himself as a firebrand progressive, particularly with more seasoned,
Yeah, yes, Fear. I've seen that image. Yeah.
challenge for his campaign that he has not met to this point.
And the interesting part, Antoine's talking about that to the right wing, the red meat to this extreme. These are not extreme issues for those middle or conservative Democrat voters, independent voters who are concerned during the first debate when all the members of Congress said they would raise their hand.
To my knowledge, Spoobs, to my knowledge, that was something that he actually wrote. I don't know if he wrote specifically like those specific words, but he wrote about how women fantasized about being raped. That's Bernie Sanders we're talking about, by the way.
Trump's watching, Leslie?
Ever since debates been happening, he's got the highest approval he's ever had. And the higher Sanders rises, the more popular Trump is within the Republican coalition. We're at 94%, which is historic. So thank you, Sanders, because that's something even Hillary Clinton couldn't do for the Republican Party.
I'm just curious about one thing. I want to know how hard these candidates, and this is why I'm looking at Joe Biden in particular, but how hard will they go after Bernie Sanders, given that Bernie Sanders' supporters are so...
Yes, it was part of his thesis, if I recall. I haven't, I'm going to be honest, I haven't read the entire article, his thesis that he wrote, so I could be wrong on certain details. But yeah, he did pen something like that.
Office was there was graffiti from some of the so-called Bernie Bros, and that adds an added wrinkle that that's difficult for some candidates to overcome.
Linda, I know I may get in trouble for saying this, but Bernie Sanders and his supporters are much like Donald Trump and his supporters. They're very loyal to him and to his cause. I'm not sure if that loyalty and that energy.
That's not entirely accurate. There's a difference between Trump supporters and Bernie supporters, because Bernie supporters are cultish. These people advocate for violence. They want to put people in gulags. Trump supporters have never said that kind of thing. They never act in that certain way. We just support American interests. And I admit, I'm a Trump supporter. So it's kind of ridiculous for him to make that sort of comparison.
For Red and Blue tonight, we will have candidate interviews and
They're not that,
after the debate.
not quite. Some can be. I'll agree with that dispatch. That some people can be cultish, but not too many. There are some that are, but I think the vast majority aren't. We just are happy with a candidate that puts American interest at first. At least me. I can speak for myself for the most part. You literally formed a not fake cult. Reddit is just a cult, period. Reddit is just messed up. Here we go.
Democratic presidential nomination where everything is on the line.
7 candidates face off in their final debate before the South Carolina and Super Tuesday primaries. I'm Gail Kim.
And I'm Nora O'Donnell. Let's get started.
The time has come to turn the page and open up a new chapter in the American story.
Tonight,
let us go forward. Let's win this thing. Let's transform America.
America decides.
America deserves a president who is as resilient as her people.
2020 is our time to change who makes the rules.
One stage.
This election is just too important, and we cannot afford to get it wrong.
There's no limit to what we can get done in the next 4 years.
Show up in November of 2020 and win.
7 Democratic candidates.
Together, we have built a movement.
We have a fantastically diverse and wonderful party.
We choose hope over fear. We are going to unite together.
And together, we are going to get it.
Yes, so diverse. So white. I mean, diverse. Yeah.
Here and we are strong.
Live from the Gilliard Center in Charleston, South Carolina, this is the CBS News Democratic Debate. Here are the 7 candidates for the presidential nomination.
I honestly don't see how Klobuchar qualified, but that's a whole different debate, I guess.
Good evening and welcome. The Democratic presidential primary here in South Carolina. The first primary in the South is just 4 days away.
And Super Tuesday is just a week away. And this is the biggest primary day of the year as voters in 14 states cast ballots. And many of them tell us they have not actually made up their mind. So this debate, when you think about it tonight, may be the last best chance for the candidates to make their case to South Carolina and Super Tuesday voters.
And CBS News is proud to bring you this debate along with our co-sponsors. They are the Democratic National Committee and the Congressional Black Caucus Institute, a nonpartisan organization committed to educating voters and training political leaders.
And we are partnering tonight also with Twitter, so you at home can participate in this debate. How do you do that? Send us your questions for the candidates using the Twitter #DemDebate.
Now, here are the rules for the next 2 hours. When you are asked a question, you will have 1 minute and 15 seconds to answer and 45 seconds for follow-ups.
Great, fantastic.
So let's begin. Senator Sanders, we haven't had a national unemployment rate this low for this long in 50 years. Here in South Carolina, the unemployment rate is even lower. How will you convince voters that a Democratic socialist can do better than President Trump with the economy?
Well, you're right. The economy is doing really great for people like Mr. Bloomberg and other billionaires. In the last 3 years,
that's not true.
Billionaires in this country saw an $850 billion increase in their wealth. But you know what? For the ordinary American, things are not so good. Last year, real wage increases for the average worker were less than 1%. Half of our people are living paycheck to paycheck. 87 million Americans have no health insurance or are underinsured. 45 million people are struggling with student debt. 500,000 people tonight are sleeping out on the street, including 30,000 veterans. That is not an economy that's working for the American people. That's an economy working for the 1%. We're going to create an economy for all, not just wealthy campaign contributors.
Mayor Bloomberg. Mayor Bloomberg, I'll let you respond to that. Do you think Senator Sanders' economy would be better for America than President Trump?
I think that Donald Trump thinks it would be better if he's president. I do not think so. Vladimir Putin thinks that Donald Trump should be president of the United States, and that's why Russia is helping you get elected so you'll lose to him.
Let me tell Mr. Putin, okay, I'm not a good friend of President Xi of China. I think President Xi is an authoritarian leader. And let me tell Mr. Putin, who interfered in the 2016 election, try to bring Americans against Americans. Hey, Mr. Putin, if I'm president of the United States, trust me, you're not going to interfere in any more American elections.
Senator Warren?
We know what Russia wants. It's chaos.
So look, the way I see this is that Bernie is winning right now because the Democratic Party is a progressive party, and progressive ideas are popular ideas, even if there are a lot of people on this stage who don't want to say so. You know, but
even though the primaries are not a reflection of the entire population, but whatever.
A better president than Bernie. And the reason for that is that getting a progressive agenda enacted is going to be really hard, and it's going to take someone who digs into the details to make it happen. Bernie and I both wanted to help rein in Wall Street. In 2008, we both got our chance, but I dug in, I fought the big banks, I built the coalitions, and I won. Bernie and I both want to see universal health care, but Bernie's plan doesn't explain how to get there, doesn't show how we're going to get enough allies into it, and doesn't show enough about how we're going to pay for it. I dug in, I did the work, and then Bernie's team trashed me for it. We need a president who is going to dig in, do the hard work, and actually get it done. Progressives have got one shot, and we need to spend it with a leader who will get something done.
Mayor Buttigieg, we want to bring you in this conversation. Why would the Russians want to be working on behalf of Bernie Sanders?
I'll tell you what the Russians want. They don't have a political party. They want chaos, and chaos is what is coming our way. I mean, look, if you think the last 4 years has been chaotic, divisive, toxic, exhausting, imagine spending the better part of 2020 with Bernie Sanders versus Donald Trump. Think about what that will be like for this country. And meanwhile, folks at home from South Carolina to South Bend are trying to figure out what any of this means for us. Because it's right that there is a progressive majority, an American majority, that wants to see real change, wants to see wages go up and go up faster.
Wages have gone up.
Saving for retirement. But also there's a majority of the American people who I think right now just want to be able to turn on the TV, see their president, and actually feel their blood pressure go down a little bit instead of up through the roof. No. We have an opportunity to set a different tone.
Bernie Sanders' analysis is right. The difference is I don't like his solutions. I don't believe that a government takeover of large parts of the economy makes any sense for working people or for families. I think that what we need to do is to present an alternative that includes a vibrant, competitive private sector. But we all know unchecked capitalism has failed. The answer is not for the government to take over the...
Capitalism is not unchecked. That is ridiculous.
Break the corporate stranglehold on our government and have the government work for the people again.
Vice President Biden?
Well, let me just finish, because we need to have an alternative to Donald Trump. I'm talking about doubling the minimum wage, cutting taxes by 10% for everybody who makes less than $250,000 and creating over 4.5 million good-paying union jobs. Donald Trump stinks. He's incompetent as a steward of the American economy. We have to show that we can create a growing, prosperous economy that works for American working people.
Mr. Steyer, thank you. Your time's up. Vice President Biden?
You know, we talk about progressive. Let's talk about being progressive. Walking distance here is Mother Emanuel Church. 9 people shot dead by a white supremacist. Bernie voted 5 times against the Brady bill and wanted a waiting period. No, let me finish. And waited a waiting period of 12 hours. I'm not saying he's responsible for the 9 deaths, but that man would not have been able to get that weapon with the waiting period had been what I suggest until you are cleared. In addition to that, being progressive, he thought Barack Obama, he wanted a primary, he said we should primary Barack Obama. Someone should. And in fact, the president was weak, and our administration was, in fact, not up to it. Look, folks, let's talk about progressive. Progressive is getting things done, and that's what we got done. We got a lot done.
Senator Sanders, your response?
You know, Pete mentioned, I'm hearing my name mentioned a little bit tonight. I wonder why. And maybe, you know, Pete mentions what the American people want. I will tell you, Pete, what the American people want, and Joe, what the American people want. They don't want candidates to be running to billionaires for huge amounts of funding.
All right, let's clear this up once and for all.
Pete has gotten funding
you've got people
from
believing
over
something
50
that is false.
billionaires.
This
Joe,
needs
I
to be
think, has
cleared up.
gotten a little bit more. What the American people want, by the way, and a lot of the issues we'll be discussing tonight are issues I raised 4 years ago. Raising the minimum wage to a living wage, $15 an hour, making public colleges and universities tuition free, and finally doing what every other major country on earth does, guaranteeing health care to all people as a human right through a Medicare for all single-payer system.
I can't allow this to stand because it's just not true. Senator Sanders has got people believing something that is untrue about my campaign. The idea that most of my campaign is funded by billionaires.
I didn't say that, Pete.
50 people. All right. In Charleston alone, just in Charleston, over 2,000 people have contributed to my campaign. That means the dollars that have come to my campaign just from Charleston is more than the dollars that have come from the 50 people that you mentioned. Grassroots contributions are the lifeblood of my campaign. In fact, I shouldn't miss the opportunity. If you're watching right now and you support my campaign, go to PeteForAmerica.com and chip in. And if you're watching right now and you're a billionaire, I will raise your taxes. But if you'd like to defeat Donald Trump, please go to PeteForAmerica.com and donate the legal maximum of $2,800 if you're a billionaire.
All right, Mayor Buttigieg. Vice President Biden, I want to bring us to another topic. We're in South Carolina. It's the first primary with a significant black voting population. Your numbers appear to be slipping with black voters. And I'm wondering if you could respond about why that is happening to you at this particular time.
Well, first of all, the latest poll I saw, my numbers, I'm still 15 points ahead. The latest poll.
Yes, you're correct.
But look.
But Senator Sanders is in striking distance of you. You are within the margin of error in this state.
Well, it depends on which poll. Look, I've earned the vote. I've worked like the devil to earn the vote of the African American community, not just here, but across the country. I've been coming here for years and years, creating jobs here, making sure that the port, for example, that employs 1 in 11 people, we put $500 million in our administration just into this county. We've created jobs for people. The people know.
I'm sincerely hoping that someone takes a swing at someone else. I'm just curious to see if that'll happen.
I don't expect anything. I plan to earn the vote. I'm here to ask. I'm here to earn it. But folks, I intend to win South Carolina, and I will win the African American vote here in South Carolina.
Mr. Biden, will you continue if you do not win South Carolina? You have said that South Carolina will determine the outcome of this presidential race. If you don't win South Carolina, will you continue in this race?
I will win South Carolina.
All right, sir. Mayor Bloomberg, I'd like to bring you in this conversation. I want to ask you about a question that impacts the black and brown community. You've apologized for stop and frisk repeatedly. What exactly are you apologizing for?
We let it get out of control. And when I realized that, I cut it back by 95%. And I've apologized and asked for forgiveness. I've met with black leaders to try to get an understanding of how I can better position myself and what I should have done and what I should do next time. But let me tell you, I have been working very hard. We've improved the school system for black and brown students in New York City. We've increased the jobs that are available to them. We've increased the housing that's available to them.
But what more
we have
can
programs
you do about
like
this issue, Mr. Mayor, to put people's fears and skepticism to rest?
I think
it
they just
continues to follow you.
No, well, that's because it's in their interest to promote that. But if you talk to the people in New York City, I have over 100 black elected officials that have endorsed me. A lot of them are in the audience tonight. And I've earned the respect of people in New York City. I was the mayor of the largest, most populous city in the United States for 12 years. And people will tell you it's a lot better city today. It is safer for everybody. The school system.
It's only safer because Giuliani cleaned everything up. If it wasn't for Giuliani, New York would not be in the state that it is now. It's in the state that it is now in spite of what Bloomberg has done, in spite of what de Blasio has done. New York is only livable because of Giuliani. Let's be clear about this.
System is better. The budget's under control. We've done the things that people need in New York City for all ethnicities.
Mayor Buttigieg? Mayor to mayor, you've certainly had your issues with the black community as well. Do you think the New York City's implementation of stop and frisk was racist?
Yes, in effect it was, because it was about profiling people based on their race. And the mayor even said that they disproportionately stopped white people too often and minorities too little. And I'm not here to score points. I come at this with a great deal of humility because we have had a lot of issues, especially when it comes to racial justice and policing in my own community. And I come to this with some humility because I'm conscious of the fact that there's 7 white people on this stage talking about racial justice. None of us...
I'm sorry, what does that have to do with anything? Just because you're white, you can't talk about racial justice? That's ridiculous. That right there is a statement of ignorance.
None of us have the experience, the lived experience of, for example, walking down the street or in a mall and feeling eyes on us, regarding us as dangerous without knowing the first thing about us just because of the color of our skin. None of us have the experience that black women have had that drives that maternal mortality gap that we are all rightly horrified by, of going into a doctor and being less likely to have your description of being in pain believed because of...
That is just absolute nonsense. There is no evidence to prove that sort of nonsense that he just spouted. And when you go to a hospital, you get care based on the level of pain or issue that you have. Give me a break.
Your race. Since we don't have the experience, the next best thing we can do is actually listen to those who do.
I know, wait a second. I know that if I were black, my success would have been a lot harder to achieve. And I know a lot of black people that if they were white...
That's nonsense. You've had mayors like the mayors of Detroit. They were mayors of a major metropolis just like this numbnuts. And he wants to say that somehow it was harder for them. No, actually, I would even argue that it would be easier for them to be successful in an urban environment, because in an urban environment, you have a much larger African-American community, especially like, let's say, Detroit, because most of the people in politics there are pretty much going to be black. So this sort of thing that he's talking about is just racial nonsense. This is virtue signaling to the nth degree to try and score points with the black community.
Right. It would have been a lot easier for them. That's just a fact, and we've got to do something about it than rather just demagogue about it.
Senator Klobuchar, was the way that the mayor implemented stop and frisk racist?
Yes, and I think that what we need to do, instead of just reviewing everything from the past, is talk about where we're going to go forward. Martin Luther King once said that we are all tied in a single garment of destiny, and that what affects one of us directly affects all of us indirectly. So when there is racism in the criminal justice system, then we need to fix it. And to me, that means sentencing reform like the First Step Act and extending that to the states with the Second Step Act. It means equal opportunity, because if we don't pass Representative Clyburn's bill out of South Carolina here to invest in impoverished communities, we're never going to get to that single garment of destiny. And we also need to do something about child care, about making sure we increase the minimum wage, and then finally voting. While we are all sitting here debating, Wisconsin has kicked hundreds of thousands of people off of their voting rolls. Georgia kicked 100,000 off. As president, I will get voting rights to be a reality for everyone.
Senator Warren, I'm coming to you. I want to direct this question to you because Mayor Bloomberg has said he got in this race late because he doesn't believe that any of you on stage can beat Donald Trump. You said Mayor Bloomberg is not the safest candidate, he is the riskiest candidate. What did you mean by that?
I mean that Mayor Bloomberg, let's think of it this way. We're here in Charleston, and you know who's going to be in...
Actually, I have just a quick question. Are there going to be actually any substantive questions in this debate? Is there going to be anything pragmatic, policy-wise? Is there going to be anything that's just not an opinion? I mean, maybe it's just me. I'd like something more substantive, but let's continue.
Charleston later this week is Donald Trump. He's going to be here to raise money for his buddy, Senator Lindsey Graham. Who funded Lindsey Graham's campaign for re-election last time? It was Mayor Bloomberg. And that's not the only right-wing senator that Mayor Bloomberg has funded. In 2016, he dumped $12 million into the Pennsylvania Senate race to help re-elect an anti-choice right-wing Republican senator. And I just want to say, the woman challenger was terrific. She lost by a single point. In 2012, he scooped in to try to defend another Republican senator against a woman challenger. That was me. It didn't work, but he tried hard. I don't care how much money Mayor Bloomberg has. The core of the Democratic Party will never trust him. He has not earned their trust. I will. And the fact that he cannot earn the trust of the core of the Democratic Party means he is the riskiest candidate standing on this stage.
All right, Senator Warren, thank you. Mayor Bloomberg, would you like to respond? Mayor Bloomberg.
I have been training for this job since I stepped on the pile that was still smoldering on 9/11. I know what to do. I've shown I know how to run a country. I've run the city, which is almost the same size, as bigger than most countries in the world. I am not the least. I'm the one choice that makes some sense. I have the experience, I have the resources, and I have the record. And all of the sideshows that the senator wants to bring up have nothing to do with that. When people hired me to run New York City 3 times in an overwhelmingly Democratic progressive city, they elected me again and again.
Mr. Vice President?
I was mentioned in this.
No.
I'd like to respond.
Go ahead, Senator.
He called me out by name in this and referred to what I talk about as a sideshow. You know, this is personal for me. When I was 21 years old, I got my first job as a special education teacher. I loved that job. And by the end of the first year, I was visibly pregnant. The principal wished me luck and gave my job to someone else.
That is a lie. That never happened. That is a lie. It's been proven that she lied about this, and she's lying again.
Pregnancy discrimination, you bet. But I was 21 years old. I didn't have a union to protect me, and I didn't have any federal law on my side. So I packed up my stuff, and I went home. At least I didn't have a boss who said to me, kill it, the way that Mayor Bloomberg
never
alleged
said
to
that.
have said to one of his pregnant employees. People want a chance to hear. People want a chance to hear from the women who
I
have
never
worked.
said that.
I want to allow the mayor
for the
an
record, if
opportunity
she
to
was a
respond.
teacher in New York City, she would never have had that problem. We treated our teachers the right way, and the unions will tell you exactly that.
Well, Mayor Bloomberg, Senator Warren has raised...
Let us have the women have an opportunity to speak. The Bloomberg corporations and Mayor Bloomberg himself have been accused of discrimination. They are bound by non-disclosures so that they cannot speak. If he says there is nothing to hide here, then sign a blanket release and let those women speak out so that they can tell their stories the way I can tell my story without having to fear that they're going to be sued by a billionaire.
Thank you. We have a number of issues discussed tonight, but I want to give the mayor an opportunity to respond because she has raised concerns about women in your workplace. At the last debate, you said some of your female employees might not have liked some of your jokes. Did these women take your jokes wrong, or were you wrong to make the jokes?
Probably wrong to make the jokes. I don't remember what they were, so I assume if it bothered them, I was wrong, and I apologize. I'm sorry for that. But what happened here is we went back 40 years, and we could only find 3 cases where women said they were uncomfortable. Nobody accused me of doing anything other than just making a comment or two. And what the senator did suggest was that we release these women from the non-disclosure agreement. I did that 2 days later, and my company has said we will not use non-disclosure agreements ever again. The senator has got it, and I don't know what else she wants us to do.
I'll be
We're
clear.
following exactly what she asked to do.
I'll tell you exactly
and the
what I
trouble
want you to do.
is, with this senator, enough is never enough for what this. I'm going to start focusing on some of these other things. We just cannot continue to relitigate this every time. We did what she asked. And thank you. We've probably made the world better because of it. And by my company renouncing using these, we've probably changed, hopefully, the corporate landscape all across America.
But if you get nominated, we'll be relitigating this all year.
Do what I asked.
Senator Warren, that is a very serious charge that you leveled at the mayor.
Yes.
You told a woman to get an abortion. What evidence do you have of that?
Her own words.
And Mayor Bloomberg, could you respond to this?
I never said it. Period. End of story. Look, categorically never said it. When I was accused of doing it, we couldn't figure out what she was talking about. But right now, I'm sorry if she heard what she thought she heard or whatever happened. I didn't take any pleasure in that. And we've just got to go on, but I never said it. Come on.
What I asked the mayor to do is to do a release of all people who have discrimination
We are doing that,
claims.
Senator.
Look, who have
We want to get to the issue. We want to get to the issue of electability and the ideological difference within the Democratic Party.
Good.
Senator Sanders, the cost of your agenda. Yesterday, you released information about how you will pay for your major proposals, but not all of your details are clear. You've proposed more than $50 trillion in new spending. You've said Medicare for all will cost $30 trillion. But you can only explain how you'll pay for just about half of that. Can you do the math for the rest of us?
How many hours do you have?
2.
The answer
that's
is,
the problem.
No, it's not the problem. All right, let's talk about Medicare for all. I'm sure you're familiar with a new study that just came out of Yale University, published in Lancet magazine, one of the prestigious medical journals in the world. You know what it said? Medicare for all will lower healthcare costs in this country by $450 billion a year and save 68,000 lives of people who otherwise would have died. What we need to do is to do what every other major country on earth does, guarantee health care to all people, not have thousands of separate insurance plans which are costing us some $500 billion a year to administer. Our plan, we have laid out options all over the place. One of the options is a 7.5% payroll tax on employers, which will save them substantial sums of money.
Bernie, let me respond to this.
Does the math add up?
No, the math does not add up. In fact, just on 60 Minutes this weekend, he said he wasn't going to rattle through the nickels and the dimes. Well, let me tell you how many nickels and dimes we're talking about. Nearly $60 trillion. Do you know how much that is for all of his programs? That is 3 times the American economy, not the federal government, the entire American economy. The Medicare for All plan alone, page 8 clearly says that it'll kick 149 million Americans off their current health insurance in 4 years. That is true. As one prominent Democrat once said, we should pay attention.
That's right, Meave. That's pretty much Common Core math right there.
connection to where the voters of this country are, Bernie. That prominent Democrat was Barack Obama a few months ago. And I think that's what we should do. They are not with you on spending nearly $60 trillion. What I think we should do is make things more affordable, nonprofit public option, make sure we're paying for long-term care better, take on the pharmaceuticals like you and I have done together, and do something for the people of America instead of a bunch of broken promises that sound good on bumper stickers.
Mr. Steyer.
I think we're talking about
We'll get to you,
Matt.
Mr. Sanders.
Let's talk about it.
Can I say something?
Look, first of all,
Bernie, let me go.
Tom, I think she was talking about my plan, not yours.
I think we were talking about math, and it doesn't take 2 hours to do the math. Because let's talk about what it adds up to. Well, we don't. Let's talk about math indeed. Okay, so here's the math. No, here's the math.
Excuse me, can I respond to the
doing nothing is what will happen.
Senator Sanders, you're allowed a quick response, and then we would like to allow the other candidates.
Moderator,
Senator
guys.
Sanders? Senator Sanders?
Moderator, is it my turn?
This
Senator
helps a lot,
Sanders,
doesn't
you
it?
have been name-checked. You are allowed to respond.
Okay. What the Health and Human Services have said in analyzing healthcare costs, what recent Yale study has said is that your program would cost some $50 trillion over a 10-year period. We would continue to pay, in some cases, 10 times more for the same exact prescription drugs. What every study out there, conservative or progressive, says, Medicare for all will save money. Ours will cost about $45 billion, not $60 trillion.
No, I was talking, Bernie, I was talking about,
We would like, Senator Sanders, we would like to bring Mr. Steyer in on this conversation. Mr. Steyer, please.
I was talking about all your programs.
Excuse me, Amy. This conversation shows a huge risk for the Democratic Party. We are looking at a party that has decided that we're either going to support someone who's a democratic socialist or somebody who has a long history of being a Republican. And let me say that I got into this race because I wanted to fight for economic justice, for racial justice, and to make sure we had climate justice for the American people. And I am scared. If we cannot pull this party together, if we go to one of those extremes, we take a terrible risk of re-electing Donald Trump.
Thank you, Mr. Steyer.
And that is something, I still have some time, and let me just say this. That is a risk that will hurt the American people in a way that none of us on this stage should be willing to risk.
Thank you. Let's keep this topic going, Mayor Pete.
So let's do some math. Senator Sanders at one point said it was going to be $40 trillion, then it was 30, then it was 17. It's an incredible shrinking price tag. At some point has said it is unknowable to even see what the price tag would be. Now there are new numbers going. I'll tell you exactly what it adds up to. It adds up to 4 more years of Donald Trump, Kevin McCarthy as Speaker of the House, and the inability to get the Senate into Democratic hands. The time has come for us to stop acting like the presidency is the only office that matters. Not only is this a way to get Donald Trump reelected, we got a House to worry about. We got a Senate to worry about. And this is really important. Look, if you want to keep the House in Democratic hands, you might want to check with the people who actually turned the House blue. 40 Democrats who are not running on your platform. They are running away from your platform as fast as they possibly can. I want to send those Democrats back to the United States House. Let's listen to them when they say that they don't want to be out there defending Senator Sanders.
Thank you, Mayor Buttigieg. Vice President Biden, please.
I guess the only way you do this is jump in and speak twice as long as you should. Here's the deal. Look, a guy is a friend of mine down here named Fritz Hollings. He passed away. He said, you want to know what a man in a room will do? Look what they've done. Look what they've done. You talk about concerned about race. Well, my good friend on the end of this platform, he in fact bought a system that was a private prison system after he knew that, in fact, what happened was they hogtied young men in prison here in this state. They, in fact, made sure that in Georgia they did not have health care for the people who were being held. They, in fact, went on and he said, after he knew that, he bought it, and then he said he was proud of his accomplishment. You talk about what we're talking about with Bernie. Bernie, in fact, hasn't passed much of anything. The fact of the matter is,
I get to answer that.
Look, the fact is, here's the deal. I'm not out of time. You spoke over time, and I'm going to talk. Here's the deal. Here's the deal. The fact of the matter is, look at what's happening here.
Holy crap, Joe's pissed.
Look at what's happening here. We have to win the Senate back. And by the way, I went into all of those races that got 41 new Democrats. The majority of them are supporting me for president.
And Mr. Vice President, I have to allow. Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Wait a second.
Mr. Mayor, you're allowed to respond.
I bought stock in a prison company thinking they'd do a better job, and I investigated and I sold it.
Okay.
You
knew when you bought it they'd done that.
I get to answer this question. And in fact, since then, I've worked to end the use of private prisons in my home state, and we've ended it. I've started a bank to support black ownership of businesses, women ownership of businesses, and Latino owners of businesses, because this financial service industry is prejudiced. I have worked tirelessly on this, and you know I'm right. You wrote the crime bill.
Where we come from, that's called Tommy Come Lately.
There are other people here. Put hundreds of thousands of young black and Latino men in prison.
Okay. Let me say something.
Thank you.
There's something going on here. I have worked for racial justice completely, and that is an absolute unfair statement.
All I know is
Tommy Come Lately.
if we spend the next 4 months tearing our party apart, we're going to watch Donald Trump spend the next 4 years tearing our country apart.
Look,
so my argument here is that we need to get back to what's happening right now. We have a clear choice of who's going to lead this party. And I am the only one in the New Hampshire debate when asked if we had a problem with a socialist leading the ticket that raised my hand. I like Bernie. We came in together to the Senate, but I do not think that this is the best person to lead the ticket. And if you want to talk about getting things done and make a comparison, according to Vanderbilt University in Tennessee, last Congress, I was the most effective Democrat in the U.S. Senate on 15 metrics. Bernie and Elizabeth were in the bottom half. It matters. It matters if you can actually get things done. It is not just who talks the best, who actually gets things done.
Yeah, she has a rather grating voice. I agree.
And especially with the African American community, there have been a lot of broken promises. And I think having someone that keeps their promises and follows through and is going to get things done for this people matters. And that's why I asked for your support.
Mayor Bloomberg, please.
Let's just go on the record. They talked about 40 Democrats. 21 of those were people that I spent $100 million to help elect. All of the new Democrats that came in, put Nancy Pelosi in charge, and gave the Congress the ability to control this president, I got them. Number two, when you talk about money, let's put this in perspective. The federal budget is $4.5 trillion a year. We get $3.5 trillion in revenue. We lose $1 trillion a year. That's why the federal budget deficit is right now, the debt is $20 trillion going up to 21. We just cannot afford some of the stuff people talk about. But if you let me finish. If you keep on going, we will elect Bernie. Bernie will lose to Donald Trump. And Donald Trump and the House and the Senate and some of the state houses will all go red. And then between gerrymandering and appointing judges for the next 20 or 30 years, we're going to live with this
Mayor
catastrophe.
Bloomberg, thank you. I will allow Senator Sanders a quick response, and then Senator Warren. Senator Sanders, a quick response, and then Senator
Thank you very much. Mayor Bloomberg has a solid and strong and enthusiastic base of support. Problem is, they're all billionaires. Now, if you look, on the other hand, of the last 50 polls that have been done nationally, Mr. Bloomberg, I beat Trump 47 of those 50 times. If you look at battleground states like Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, polling just
the polls aren't the election.
I beat Trump. And if you want to beat Trump, what you're going to need is an unprecedented grassroots movement of black and white and Latino, Native American and Asian people who are standing up and fighting for justice.
Can anybody
in
this room imagine moderate Republicans going over and voting for him? And you have to do that or you can't win.
Thank you, Senator Warren.
That is the problem. And that is that a progressive agenda is popular, Mayor Bloomberg, and for everyone on this stage. We talk about how...
No, it's actually not. It's only popular within a very small minority of Democrats that usually vote in these primaries.
how to build a future. That's what matters. I talk to people in selfie lines every day who tell me about the importance of getting real help on health care. It's why I also have a way to pay for health care that doesn't raise taxes on middle-class families. But it's so much more than that. As Democrats, we need to speak to the future we can build together. We need to speak of the prosperity we can build together. How about a wealth tax in America? Because with a 2-cent tax on just the top 1/10 of 1%,
God.
we have a chance to...
Not this stupid 2-cent tax argument again. It's so stupid, and it doesn't make any mathematical sense. She constantly says the same dumb stuff all the time.
To invest in universal child care for every one of our babies, to really level the playing field, put $50 billion into historically black colleges and universities, and start closing the racial wealth gap by canceling student loan debt for 43 million Americans. We need to talk about our aspirations, our hopes. This is a moment to choose hope over fear.
Senator, thank you.
This is our moment.
Senator, thank you. We have to take a quick break. When we come back, the Democratic presidential debate continues right after this, only on CBS.
Wow. Oh my God. This is only the first break. I think there's like a second one after this one. So we're only like a third of the way through. Whew. Boy, oh boy, kids. This is not going to be pretty. There hasn't been any real discussion that's substantive. If you really notice, there's only been a regurgitation of talking points. There's only been attacking each other left and right. There's been some points that were raised about Bernie's viability as a candidate that were actually somewhat valid. I would argue that what their assessments of if Bernie gets the candidacy, that pretty much guarantees Trump a win. Yes, but the only problem with their logic is that they don't realize that they are all within that category. Bernie is an outward communist, essentially. He's a socialist communist. He's said this before. He's said it again. He'll continue to say that. These people instead, they may not use that term that they're socialists, but they're pushing essentially the same programs. They're pushing the same policies. They're pushing the same solutions that just do not work. Forgiving all student debt is not going to work. You're not going to have all the money to do that. One second, I'm looking at some stuff in chat here. We tried to make it through that debate on our stream Friday night. We made it halfway, then completely derailed. Yeah, I skipped the last one. I had to skip the last one because I had other things going on and I wasn't able to get on stream for that. But I watched it afterwards, and wow, even that last one, it was just too much. It was too crazy, and we're in the same kind of boat right now here where all they're doing is attacking each other, which helps Republicans a great deal, though. I'm not complaining about this. Let them eat each other. Let the self-immolation continue. Let this whole thing persist, because what's going to happen is that whatever happens, whatever candidate comes out of this whole thing, you know they're going to be a battered candidate. If they're a battered candidate, when they go up on the stage then against Donald Trump, do you really think that they're going to be able to hold themselves up? I don't really think so. On top of that, there is a chance, there really is a chance that you may get a brokered convention with the Democrats. There's a lot of bad blood going on, especially between the Bernie bros and the rest of the party. Well, Aaron 6713, this is a live debate. It probably will get worse. We'll see what happens. No, Trump will destroy them. Whoever ends up being the candidate, he's gonna annihilate them essentially. Let me check in on here real quick. Nope, they're still not in it. Okay, good. Keep it muted for now. So there's a big chance there's going to be a brokered convention. Whoa. Oh, there we go. I think they're picking it up again. Is that what's happening?
I'm Gail King with Norah O'Donnell. Joining us now in the question here in Charleston, South Carolina, are CBS News colleagues, the A-Team, Bill Whitaker of 60 Minutes, Chief Washington Correspondent, that's Major Garrett, and Margaret Brennan, moderator of Face the Nation. We're going to begin with you, Vice President Biden, for this part. Just across the street, as you mentioned at the top of the debate, is a theater where 9 people were shot and killed inside the Mother Emanuel Church. We all remember that day back in 2015. And every day in our country, over 100 people die from gun violence. You all have plans, I know, on this stage to address the gun crisis, but Congress has not been able to pass a major gun legislation in a quarter of a century. And just think about this. In those 25 years, we've had Columbine, Newtown, Parkland, Las Vegas. We could go on and on. Vice President Biden, I want to start with you. Why should anyone have faith that you're the one who can get this done now?
Because I'm the only one that ever got it done nationally. I beat the NRA twice. I got assault weapons banned. I got magazines that could not hold more than 10 rounds in them. I got them eliminated, except we had a thing called an election with hanging chads in Florida, and it was not reauthorized. In addition to that, I passed the Brady bill with waiting periods. I led that fight. But my friend to my right and others have, in fact, also given to the gun manufacturers absolute immunity. Imagine if I stood here and said we give immunity to drug companies, we give immunity to tobacco companies. That has caused carnage on our streets. 150 million people have been killed since 2007 when Bernie voted to exempt the gun manufacturers from liability. More than all the wars, including Vietnam, from that point on. Carnage on our street. And I want to tell you, if I'm elected and I'm coming for you and gun manufacturers, I'm going to take you on and I'm going to beat you. I'm the only one who's done it.
Yes,
that's why we've got to change what
Washington
Washington
dig
can
in
deliver.
and talk about what really it's going to take to get something done. I've been in the Senate when I've seen gun safety legislation introduced, get a majority, and then doesn't pass because of the filibuster. Understand this. The filibuster is giving a veto to the gun industry. It gives a veto to the oil industry. It's going to give a veto on immigration until we're willing.
The filibuster is one of the greatest, if not the greatest, legislative tool in our legislature that we have, that was devised by our founding fathers to not have rampant dictatorial authoritarian people like Elizabeth Warren who wants to just ram legislation through without any sort of opposition. This woman is insane and dangerous, okay? Insane and dangerous.
Willing to dig in and say that if Mitch McConnell is going to do to the next Democratic president what he did to President Obama, and that is try to block every single thing he does, that we are willing to roll back the filibuster, go with a majority vote, and do what needs to be done for the American people.
Okay,
Senator,
but
we're going to stay on this topic and allow Senator.
Beat Mitch McConnell.
Understand this. Many people on this stage do not support rolling back
Senator.
the filibuster.
Thank you.
Until we're ready to
Senator.
do that, we can't.
Senator,
make
I want to
real
allow
change.
Senator Sanders to respond because you've gone after the insurance industry, you've taken on pharmaceutical companies, and you've taken on big tech. Why did you vote repeatedly to give gun manufacturers a pass?
Well, you know, Joe has voted for terrible trade agreements. No. Joe voted for the war in Iraq. My point was, I have cast thousands of votes, including bad votes. That was a bad vote. I have today a D- voting record from the NRA. 30 years ago, I likely lost a race for the one seat for Congress in Vermont because 30 years ago, I supported a ban on assault weapons. 30 years ago. Right now, my view is we need to expand background checks end the gun show loophole and do what the American people want, not what the NRA
Okay, but wait a
wants.
second.
Here's the thing. The opposition to the filibuster is not a discretion from a long
I think
time
you
ago.
recognize me. Thank you. I have a 6 million person organization around this country, Moms to Men Action in every town. We have put background checks. We've got background checks in 20 states. So you can do it. It's Congress that can't seem to do it. And I don't know why we think.
There's already background checks. The law already requires that. There's no such thing as a gun show loophole, because even people that sell guns at gun shows, they have to abide by the law. They have to provide a background check. They're not going to be able to provide a gun just by purchasing it at a gun show. The only possible argument that they have has to do if two private citizens, I own a gun, another guy owns a gun, and I sell him a gun. But even in that scenario, you have to have a gun license. You have to transfer the license. If you do that, if you just sell a gun privately, you're still breaking the law. So all these arguments are ridiculous. And the NRA is just an organization. That's all they do. They just lobby. They don't have any sort of like legislative power out of the doors that way. It's not what the vilification of the NRA is ridiculous. But moving on.
I think they're going to do it. The vice president voted for a death bill and supported the NRA, and certainly Senator Sanders has supported the NRA. But we can do this. We just got to stop talking about it.
But the way we do it is having someone leading the ticket from a part of the country that we actually need the votes. So I have long supported the assault weapon ban. I am the author of the bill to close the boyfriend loophole that says that domestic abusers can't go out and get an AK-47.
I wrote that law.
Along with, you didn't write that bill.
I wrote the bill, the Violence Against Women Act, that took
you did that.
out of the hands of people who abused her.
We'll have a fact check look at this.
Let's look at the fact check.
Goodness.
The only thing that the boyfriend loophole was not covered. I couldn't get that covered. You, in fact, when you were as a senator, tried to get it covered, and Mitch McConnell is holding it up on his desk right now, and we're going to lose the Violence Against Women Act across the board.
Okay, so if I could finish. I have the bill. Anyone can check it out to close the boyfriend loophole. Also, to close the Charleston loophole is another bill that's out there, universal background checks. But let me say how we win this. We've got to win in the middle of the country. And while everyone talks about winning rural areas, suburban areas, I'm the only one up here with the receipts that has actually repeatedly, while being for the assault weapon ban, won in Republican congressional districts over and over again, including Michelle Bachmann's district. So having someone that can lead the ticket, that can bring people with her, is the way you get gun safety legislation. I look at these proposals and say, do they hurt my Uncle Dick in the deer stand? They do not. And so coming from a proud hunting state and
actually they do. If you pay attention to the laws that you're trying to pass, you're going to be banning just about every gun, especially if you define in the law that you're trying to remove semi-automatic weapons. Those include handguns, those include certain shotguns, those include certain hunting rifles. This is ludicrous. Someone who claims to know anything about guns, and I am ignorant of all this. I'm not even someone who's like an aficionado of firearms or anything like that. But even someone like myself who's relatively ignorant about this thing knows about this sort of stuff.
Still being able to pass this legislation.
Senator Klobuchar,
is
thank you. We want to allow many people to get in on this topic. Mayor Buttigieg.
I'm definitely on board with the part about sending up somebody from the middle of the country. But I want to come back to this question about the filibuster, because this is not some long ago bad vote that Bernie Sanders took. This is a current bad position that Bernie Sanders holds. And we're in South Carolina. How are we going to deliver a revolution if you won't even support a rule change? We are in the state. We are in the state where Strom Thurmond used the filibuster to block civil rights legislation repeatedly. No less a Senate traditional figure than Harry Reid has called for it to go. It has got to go because otherwise Washington will not deliver. I was in high school when the Columbine shooting happened. And I remember everybody in Washington saying, never again. We'll never let this happen again. And then a second school shooting generation has now been produced. Shame on us if we allow there to be a third.
All right.
And also, in terms of
Mayor
making the
Blumenthal.
case, I think it wouldn't be a bad idea for somebody to illustrate from the perspective of a veteran why the kinds of weaponry, anything remotely like what I trained on in order to go serve in a war zone, has no business being sold anywhere near an American school or church or neighborhood.
All right.
Except that stuff that's being used by military is military grade. It is a different level of weaponry compared to what is sold for the commercial market. A citizen cannot get what a soldier uses. There has to be some really extreme licensing and hoops to jump through to even get remotely close to that level. Okay, so he's just standing on the shoulders of soldiers to make a absolutely ridiculous point.
Senator Sanders, please.
30 years ago, supported a ban on assault weapons. Mike Bloomberg has started a very good organization, Moms Demand Action. Congratulations. They have credited me with gun sense, as you.
Yes, we did.
Furthermore, it is my view that the time is now, and Joe made this point. Look, at the end of the day, we need to rally the American people. Here is the good news. Because of all these disgusting and horrific mass shootings, the American people now understand that we must be aggressive on gun safety, not be dictated to by the NRA. And I am proud that I have a D- voting record from the NRA. If elected president, it will get worse than that.
All right, Mr. Steyer, please.
Look,
Mr. Steyer.
it isn't a question of the American people deciding that we have too much gun violence. Everyone in America knows we have too much gun violence. The problem we have is that corporations have bought Washington, D.C. The gun manufacturers own the Senate of the United States. So even though more than 90% of Americans want mandatory background checks on every gun purchase, we can't get it through the Senate. So the question you have to ask yourself is, how do we change the Senate of the United States in a material way? And there are two things. That's why I am for term limits of 12 years for every congressperson and senator, to change who's in charge, to get rid of Mitch McConnell and Lindsey Graham and Ted Cruz. But I am also, Senator Sanders is right. We need to win a huge victory across the board.
All right,
Democrats
Mr. Steyer.
need to go to the grassroots. I built one of the biggest grassroots organizations in the United States.
Your
the way
time's
to
up,
win at the
sir.
grassroots is tell the truth and
up, sir.
organize.
Bill
That's what it's
Whitaker?
going to take in 2020.
Your time's up,
Excuse me.
sir. Bill Whitaker.
Let's talk about education. South Carolina's schools score in the bottom half of the national assessment. Black students here consistently score worse than white students. Mayor Bloomberg, a key element of your response to failing schools in New York City was a dramatic increase in public charter schools. As president, would you pursue that same strategy and seek to expand charter schools nationwide?
I'm not sure they're appropriate every place. I can only tell you in New York, they provided parents with an alternative to send students to them. The charter schools are mixed in with the non-charter public schools, because our charter schools are public schools as well. They've helped each other. I saw a statistic the other day. When I came into office, 0 New York City schools were in the top 25 of the state. When I left, 23 out of 25 were from New York City. We've cut the gap between the rich and the poor. We've made an enormous difference in all of the options that parents have. I raised teachers' salaries by 43%. I put an extra $5 billion into our school system. I value education. It is the only ways to solve the poverty problem is to get people a good education. And rather than just talk about it in New York, we actually did it.
Senator Warren.
So this is one thing where a president can make a big difference all by herself. And I'm going to start with my Secretary of Education. My Secretary of Education will be someone who has taught in public school. My Secretary of Education will be someone who believes in public education. And my Secretary of Education will believe that public dollars should stay in public schools. One more thing. My Secretary of Education will believe that it is time to get rid of high-stakes testing. We need to support our children. But look, we want to build a future in this country. We build a future by investing in our children. I've got a plan to put $800 billion new federal dollars into our public schools. Education is not free. We must invest in the future of our children.
Senator Sanders.
This campaign, our campaign is about changing American priorities. Instead of giving tax breaks to billionaires, we're going to have high-quality, universal child care for every family in this country. Because the psychologists tell us 0 to 4 are the most important years of human development. We are going to triple funding for low-income Title I schools because kids' education should not depend upon the zip code in which they live. We're going to make public colleges and universities tuition-free through a tax on Wall Street speculation, and we're going to move to make certain that no teacher in America earns less than $60,000 a year. We want great teachers.
Mayor Buttigieg.
Look, the best thing that we can do to support public education is to support public educators. I'm a little biased because I'm married to one, and I get an education about education every day I come home. I have seen how teachers are being expected to dip into their own pockets to furnish their classrooms. Teachers are being expected to handle the mental health challenges that their students are facing because we don't have an adequate mental health system to support kids. And now some politicians, because they aren't willing to face the need for common sense gun law, are expecting teachers to somehow transform themselves into highly trained armed guards when there's a threat to a classroom. We have to show not only with compensation, but with support for the profession overall, our regard for those who are educating our kids. And yes, that means a Secretary of Education who will support teachers. It also means investing.
Thank you, Mr.
I'm proposing an education access board that would show that we are going to honor our teachers a little.
Pass this on to Major.
Candidates, good evening. Candidates, good evening.
People across this country are being crushed by student loan debt. This is an issue we need to talk about.
And that's what my plan would do through
the
education.
As we all know, the political conversation in our country is interactive. And because of our partner, Twitter, this debate is no different. So I want to put a question from Twitter to you, Senator Klobuchar. This is from Casey Pennington. How will your policies address and ensure affordable housing and education equity for minimum wage workers?
Thank you. This is one of the first times we've talked about housing, and I put forward an extensive policy. I think when I've looked at this, both in my job in local government and in the Senate, one sure way we can make sure that kids get a good start is if they have a roof.
Am I the only one who, when I look at her with this, I don't know who did her hair, but it reminds me of Spaceballs. Am I the only one? She just looks like, she looks like one of the people from Spaceballs, doesn't she? It can't be just me.
Roof over their head and a stable place to live. So the way you do that is, first of all, taking care of the Section 8 backlog of applicants. There are literally hundreds of thousands of people waiting. And I have found a way to pay for this and a way to make sure that people get off that list and get into housing. Secondly, you create incentives for affordable housing to be built, and third, to help people pay for it. And I want to make clear, given South Carolina and the rural population as well as urban, that this isn't just an urban problem. It's a big urban problem, but it's also a rural problem where we have housing deserts and people want to have their businesses located there, but they're not able to get housing. So for me, it's building a coalition, and I actually like to get these things done. And the way you do it is by building a coalition between urban and rural, so you can pass affordable housing and finally get it done.
This is a point where we need to talk about race, though.
I
It
understand.
is not enough to talk about housing neutrally
just speak up when
and
we want
just
to?
be
Is that a good
race
idea?
blind. It is important to recognize the role that the federal government played for decades and decades in discriminating against African Americans having an opportunity to buy homes. That's redlining. And while Mayor Bloomberg was blaming the housing crash of 2008 on African Americans and on Latinos. In fact, I was out there fighting for a consumer agency to make sure people never get cheated again on their mortgages. We have a house. I have a housing plan, and what it has
Senator
in
Warren,
it
thank you.
specifically is
Senator
a
Warren,
piece to
thank you.
deal with the effects of redlining. We can no longer pretend that everything is race neutral. We have got to address race consciously what's happening in this
Mayor
country.
Bloomberg, please, we were going to ask you about this. I want to give you a chance to respond because in addition to what Senator Warren just said on Twitter, she called you a liar and a borderline racist because of what you said about redlining.
Yes, I'm sorry, but unfortunately she's misinformed on redlining. You can go back and look at the record. I fought against it before 2008, the crisis, during 2008, and after that. Redlining is not the problem with the mortgage market, but it was a problem for the communities where it was done, and we stopped that. Let me also say, because it just since I have the floor for a second, that I really am surprised that all of these, my fellow contestants up here, I guess would be the right word for it, given nobody pays attention to the clock. I'm surprised they show up because I would have thought after I did such a good job in beating them last week that they'd be a little bit afraid to do that. But let me just say, when you're talking about affordable housing...
Beat them last week? Bloomberg, you were wrecked! You were wrecked with a capital R, E, K, and T. What the hell are you talking about, buddy? Did you climb up on a too big a step? Like, is the thinner air affecting your brain? Like, what the hell's the matter with you? Anyways, let's just continue.
We created 175,000 units of affordable housing in New York City, and I listen to them, that they're in Congress, and they say they can't get it done, can't get it done, but if you change something like the president, they would. No, you have to learn how to work with both sides of the aisle, and then you can get stuff done. I did it in New York City. I got the Republican State Senate to vote for gay marriage virtually before anybody else in this country. You can work across the aisle. You just have to know how to deal with people.
Mayor Bloomberg, thank you very much. Back to you, Bill.
Vice President Biden, black men earn 73 cents for every dollar earned by white men, are about twice as likely to be unemployed, 5 times more likely to be incarcerated, conditions that ripple across black families and have endured during both Democratic and Republican administrations. How do you convince black voters that you can change years of inequities?
2 ways. Number one, my entire life I've been involved with the black community. I was a public defender. I worked in the projects. I came along, and the first thing I did as the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, extended the Voting Rights Act, eventually for 25 years. And I've been deeply involved. And my first effort I had as a councilman was doing away with redlining in the county. The way we do this, we got to help them create wealth. And that's why we double the amount of money that is available for young entrepreneurs, and black entrepreneurs are as successful as any other group of people in the country. We go from $1.5 billion to $3 billion, taking $30 billion off the sidelines. That's how you create wealth. Secondly, I provide for the opportunity for first-time home buyers to be able to have a $15,000 tax credit, so they can get the mortgage at the front end and be able to keep it. Thirdly, I go after those people who are involved in gentrification, because what's happening is we're moving people out of their neighborhoods in ways that, in fact, make no sense. They're being bought out of things. You cannot find a place to live. And thirdly, I make sure that with regard to housing, we allow people, look, right now, if you live in a black neighborhood and you have the same exact house as the guy across the street in a white neighborhood has, your house is valued significantly less than the white. The same exact house. We've got to deal with the institutional racism.
Yeah, but that's not necessarily just a racial issue. Just because two homes from across the street from each other can have vastly different values based on a world of variables that affect the value of that property. So this is just, again, race card, racial injustice, justice, virtue signal. Hey, nobody's proposing how they fix this sort of stuff anyways. If this were, in fact, real racial injustices that are happening in the country.
President, Mr. Vice President.
I know how you cut me off all the time, but I'm not going to be quiet anymore, okay?
Mr. Steyer.
Every single policy area in the United States has a gigantic subtext of race.
Yes.
We're talking about education. We're talking about criminal justice. We're talking about housing. We're talking about loans. I started a bank to basically to correct the injustice in the financial services industry. Basically to make loans to Black-owned, Latino-owned, and women-owned businesses. We've supported over 8,000 affordable housing units. But more than that, I believe I'm the only person on this stage who believes in reparations for slavery. Something happened. We should have a formal commission on race to retell the story of the last 400 plus years in America of African Americans, of systematic legal injustice, discrimination, and cruelty, but also of $400 plus years of contribution in terms of building the United States of America and leading the United States of America from a moral standpoint.
Let me ask
and I challenge everyone.
Senator Klobuchar, next question, new topic, Senator
I don't know where you got the impression.
If you could honor the rules of the debate, thank you.
Yeah, sorry, I guess I had muted myself. What I was saying is, Steyer's talking about all this reparations. Well, would that include the discrimination that were suffered by Italians when they came here in the big waves of immigration? How about the Irish at the hands of the Germans? How about Christians and Catholics specifically that are even today still targeted in many ways by other people? I know being Catholic isn't a race, but if we're talking about reparations for discrimination and discriminatory behavior, would that be included in that? Because if we're going to talk about discrimination, let's have an honest conversation about it. Let's have a conversation talking about where this discrimination happened and who it happened to, including people that weren't minorities or traditionally defined as minorities as you would define it by today's Democrats.
Senator Klobuchar, I'd like to change topics and ask you, rural areas have populations who are older, sicker, and poorer than non-rural communities, and they have to travel farther to get medical help when they need it. Expanding coverage is going to be useless if there are no providers to go to. So how would you ensure that there is available health care in rural areas?
People aren't always aware, I know you are in South Carolina, about how much poverty there is, particularly child poverty in rural areas. So the answer is one size doesn't fit all. And one of the ways you do this, right now we have something called critical access hospitals, so they're designated for rural areas. And actually I am leading the lead Democrat on a bill to extend that, to have other types of hospitals like emergency rooms in rural areas be covered. The other issue is we don't have enough personnel. And so that's where we get to this education plan. And I don't agree with some of my colleagues here about putting hard-earned taxpayer money into rich kids going to college. What I think we need to do instead is look at what our needs are in our economy. We're going to have 1 million openings for home health care workers, particularly in rural areas that we don't know how to fill. We're going to have over 100,000 openings for nursing assistants. We're not going to have a shortage of sports marketing degrees. We're going to have a shortage of plumbers and nurses. So putting incentives in place with how we do loan payback, making 1- and 2-year degrees free, and then, of course, creating loan payback programs if people will go, especially medical students, into rural areas. Final thing is comprehensive immigration reform. I have passed the bill that allows doctors from other countries that study in our medical schools to stay and serve in rural areas. We need to expand that.
The floor is yours. Would you like the same question?
Yeah, so when I was born, there was no difference in your life expectancy if you were born in a rural area or a city. Now the gap is the biggest it's been in a generation, and that is particularly affecting Black rural families.
What the hell is he talking about? There has always been a difference of quality of care in different areas of the United States. Certain hospitals have more resources than others. Certain areas have more resources than others. What in the world is he talking about? This guy has, you know what? Let's just continue.
in places like South Carolina. We're seeing hospital closures right and left. And we're seeing them in particular in states where Medicaid was not expanded, something that is hurting black and poor white families and is largely the result of racial voter suppression. See, all of these things are connected: housing, wages, the ability to get anything meaningful done on criminal justice reform. All of these things are going to be harder to deal with as long as black voices are systematically excluded from political participation, which is happening.
There is no systematic exclusion of anybody. This is a laughable and ludicrous claim. Why doesn't anybody ever take to task these sort of comments? Show me the frickin' evidence. Why would a hospital in Chicago, for example, that has a very, very large minority population, why would that have so much more resources than a small, white, rural, mountaintop village in, like, Tennessee or West Virginia? Tell me. Is it a race thing? That the little tiny hospital in the white area wouldn't have enough money? No, it's a population and money coming into that little rural area issue. Being small population, you don't have a lot of industry there, you don't have a lot of taxpayers, you don't have a lot of money going into that county or little city. While someplace like Chicago or Detroit would have far greater resources because of the population, the taxation, and those are primarily surrounded by minorities. So how is that gap there for you, Sparky? Why didn't you tell me about that? Anyways, moving on.
Happening on everything from the purging of voter rolls to the closing of voting locations. And that harms everybody.
Time,
it's why in my Frederick Douglass plan for comprehensively dealing with these issues, part of the core of it is a 21st Century Voting Rights Act.
Senator Sanders.
Yeah. Very proud working with Congressman Jim Clyburn, South Carolina, that we increased funding for the Community Health Center program by $11 billion as part of the Affordable Care Act, which now provides for 9 million Americans access to primary health care, dental care, mental health counseling, and low-cost prescription drugs. In that bill, we also put $2 billion into a program which would provide debt forgiveness for doctors, nurses, dentists. We have a major dental affordable crisis in this country, to make sure that they are practicing in underserved areas.
Yeah, and why is the price of dental so high? That's the question that nobody ever wants to answer. Why is the bill so high? They never address why the numbers on the bill are so high and where it's coming from. They always address who has coverage and how you pay for it. Nobody ever addresses the elephant in the room, so to speak.
Advantage of a Medicare for all health care program, because it's not driven by profits for the drug companies and the insurance companies. We will have health care for all people in all parts of this country.
But in order for any of that to happen, it has to pass. We're talking about a plan that goes beyond even what they do.
Sorry, we're going to go to Mayor Bloomberg. We're going to change topics. Mayor Bloomberg, as mayor of New York, you declared war on obesity. You banned trans fats from restaurants, and you tried to do the same with large sugary drinks. So if you become president, will you push those policies on the national level as well?
Well, I think what's right for New York City isn't necessarily right for all the other cities. Otherwise, you'd have a naked cowboy in every city. So let's get serious here. But I do think it's the government's job to have good science and to explain to people what science says, how to take care of themselves and extend their lives. We are a country where there are too many people that are obese. We should do something about that. But just take a look at what happened with smoking. We did ban smoking in New York City in public places, restaurants, offices, and that sort of thing. And it has spread across America, across Europe, across Latin America, even into places in the Middle East and into the Far East. It has saved an enormous number of lives. So it just goes to show if you have good public health, then you can do things. And one of the great problems today...
Naked cowboy meme. It's a guy who walks around in New York City in Times Square with a cowboy hat, with tidy whities, and cowboy boots. And he has a guitar, People take pictures with him, and he gets money that way, and he plays music, he sings. That's a very, very New York reference, essentially.
You read about the virus. What's really happening here is the president fired the pandemic specialists in this country 2 years ago. So there's nobody here to figure out what the hell we should be doing. And he's defunded Centers for Disease Control, CDC, so we don't have the organization we need. This is a very serious.
I think that may have gotten Mayor Pete's interest hearing about a naked cowboy. Rawr, right?
As you see, the stock market's falling apart because people are really worried, and they should be. We don't have anybody to respond.
We're going to talk about that in our next segment. Before I leave you, are New Yorkers living longer because of your policies?
There's no question about that.
All right,
Before I left, life expectancy in New York City had grown by 3 years during our 12 years in office, such that when I left, it was 3 years greater than the national average.
Except that his big gulp ban was deemed unconstitutional. So that little detail he probably is not going to talk about.
All right. Vice President Biden, please. Vice President Biden.
Look, one of the things we have to do, we have a thing in the Defense Department called DARPA, special operation thing to find out all the things we have to deal with to make us safer. They came up with the internet. They came up with the whole idea of stealth technology and the rest. We have to I'm going to do the same thing at the National Institute of Health. We're going to focus at least $50 billion over the first 5 years on focusing on obesity, diabetes, Alzheimer's, and cancer. And we're going to make that investment because no one else is willing to make that investment. We can, in fact, find cures if we make the investment. And we can get that done. The American people support it. Even Republicans will support it. We have to focus on extending life, saving life, and making people, put them in a position to be able to live longer and more.
Except if they're babies inside a womb of a woman. That life doesn't matter, though. All the others, yes, but not babies.
More securely.
All right, Senator Biden, thank you.
Senator Klobuchar, Senator Sanders wants to legalize marijuana on day one of his presidency and is promising to expunge the record of anyone who has been arrested for possession. As a former prosecutor, is that a realistic promise?
Well, it is realistic to want to legalize marijuana. I want to do that too. And I also think you need to look back at people's records. And you maybe can't do it on day one, as he said. I think you want to have a process that you go through because there's too many people that have things on their records that have stopped them from getting jobs. I think a lot of what we also need to do is to make sure that when we do this, that we have money for treatment. And it's not necessarily because of marijuana, it is because of things like opioids and the like. And that's why one of the first plans I put out was for treatment. Because if you want to make the criminal justice system work, you don't want to have repeat customers, and you want to help people to get off of drugs. And the way you do that is with drug courts. The way you do that, by the way, is with my proposal for a clemency board in the White House so that you don't have a president that pell-mell gives pardons to his buddies and to white-collar offenders, but that instead you have a set process that you use that's fair and is outside of the Justice Department and well giving their advice.
All right, thank you, Senator Klobuchar. Mayor Bloomberg, I'd like to get your thoughts on this because you have called marijuana another addictive drug that we've never done research on.
Look, the first thing you do is we should not make this a criminal thing if you have a small amount. For dealers, yes. But for the average person, no, when you should expunge the records of those that got caught up in this before. Number two, we're not going to take it away from states that have already done it. But number three, you should listen to the scientists and the doctors. They say go very slowly. They haven't done enough research, and the evidence so far is worrisome before we get all our kids, particularly kids in their late teens, boys even more than girls, where this may be damaging their brains. Until we know the science, it's just nonsensical to push ahead. But whatever, the cat's out of the bag. So some states have it. You're not going to take it away. Get rid of the, decriminalize the possession.
Senator Sanders, you were name checked.
All right, look, you're right. We have a criminal justice system today that is not only broken, it is racist, got more people in jail than any other country on earth, including China. And one of the reasons for that is a horrific war on drugs. So I do believe that on day one, we will change the Federal Controlled Substance Act, which, if you can believe it, now equates heroin with marijuana. That's insane. We're going to take marijuana out of that and effectively legalize marijuana in every state in the country. What we are also going to do is move to expunge the records of those people who are...
Actually, there are studies. I have to review these more deeply, but there are studies that show that continued use of marijuana actually reduces IQ. It actually makes you more stupid. So I don't know if legalizing marijuana, as Bernie says here, if that's really a good idea.
Arrested for possession of marijuana. And I'll tell you what else we're going to do. We're going to provide help to the African American, Latino, Native American community to start businesses to sell legal marijuana rather than let a few corporations control the legalized marijuana market.
All right, Senator Sanders, thank you. We've passed the halfway mark.
Can I respond to this? I wrote the bill to set up drug courts.
All right, thank you, Vice President Biden. We will get back to you. The CBS News Democratic presidential debate will continue right after the break.
All right. Oh, my God. This is painful. I mean, like, this is physically painful to listen to this garbage. Goodness. This is really, really painful. Anyways, so a lot of the comments that I've made so far just kind of go with what's going on here. They keep spouting everything is racist. Everything is racist. But that's not the case. Race, there may be correlations, but the most basic of principles when you look at statistical data is that a correlation does not necessarily mean causation. These people are using race as a catalyst for their virtue signaling, for their identitarian politics. They are trying to appease the people's emotions. And I don't think marijuana I don't think any recreational drug should be legal. I do think that pushers and people who distribute the drug should receive greater punishments than people who are consumers. Because consumers they're not like trying to get people addicted. They're not trying to get people into a habit. They're not essentially they're not making a profit off of the suffering of others through the use of narcotics and illegal, not necessarily legal, but just through the use of drugs. Troll, I think that's Jewy, says that you don't need to study. Have you seen Tommy Chong? I believe. Oops. What the heck? My chat just reset here for a second. What's going on? Let's see. Have you seen Tommy Chong? Assuming I'm pronouncing that correctly. Pothead isn't a term that developed out of nowhere. But if you start smoking as a teen a lot, from personal experience, that seems to be the most damaging. Well, yeah, I mean, that's the worst case scenario. Using drugs, any drug really, be it alcohol, be it Ritalin, even like ADHD medicine, all those kind of drugs when you're young and your brain is still developing, that can cause some serious brain damage, actually. Developmental stunting, things of that nature, which is why this also applies to people who want to put their kids on hormone treatments to prevent them from hitting puberty, for example, hormone blockers or puberty blockers. This can cause irreparable damage, not only mentally but physically, to the child. And any recreational drug has that same sort of potential. So the problem that we run into here is that you have people like this who just want to have recreational drugs willy-nilly, left and right, open to everybody to do whatever they want. Giving people, basically, there's a saying is, you give opiates to the masses and you can control them. This is a form of control. Easily a form of control. Nothing more, nothing less. They want people to stay drunk, drugged up, under the thumb of government, under the dependence of government, because they want control. That's what socialism is. That's what the Democrats want. This is what they've been doing ever since Trump got elected, and that's why they're pissed off that Trump got elected, because he wasn't supposed to win. It wasn't supposed to happen. Okay? It just wasn't supposed to happen. My chat seems to be I mean, in the stream it looks okay, but it's not. I'm having issues on my computer. So, okay, everything seems to be up and running again here in chat. So yeah, this whole argument for drugs to me is there should be smarter criminalization rules for this. I'm probably making up a word, criminalization. Decriminalizing these kind of things. There probably is a good argument for some of that, and there should be some argument for that. But let's continue here.
Democratic debate. Each of you is campaigning for the role as commander-in-chief. Well, you will command 1.3 million U.S. troops and be responsible for protecting America's national security. There are also 53,000 here in South Carolina. You said, Senator Warren, you said you wanted to bring home all troops from the Middle East, and then you walked that back to say you want to bring home combat troops.
I do.
How does that protect America's national security?
Look, a president's first job, is to keep America safe. And an important part of that is to have a strong military. All three of my brothers served in the military, and I understand how much the military sacrifices, how much their families sacrifice, and how much they are willing to put on the line. That means that we have a sacred responsibility to them, and that is not to use our military to solve problems that cannot be solved militarily. We are not winning in Afghanistan. We are not winning in the Middle East. What we need to do is we need to use all of the tools in our toolbox. We need a strong military. We also need a strong State Department. Those are our eyes and ears on the ground. They are our front lines in diplomacy. We need a strong economy and to work worldwide on that economy, and we need strong alliances. We need to know the difference between our friends and between dictators who would do us harm, and we need to be nicer to our friends than to dictators. We need not to cut and run on our allies. We need an approach that keeps us safe by using all of the tools in a measured way.
Mayor Bloomberg, voters have not heard much about your foreign policy views. Would you pull all combat troops out of the Middle East?
No, you want to cut it back as much as you can, but I think if we learn something from 9/11, people plan things overseas and execute them here. We have to be able to stop terrorism, and there's no guarantees that you're going to be able to do it, but we have to have some troops in places where terrorists congregate, and to not do so is just irresponsible. We shouldn't be fighting wars that we can't win. We should go to war only as a last resort. Nobody argues with that. But this is a dangerous world, and if we haven't learned that after 9/11, I don't know what's going to teach us what to do. We have to do something, and I think the budget that what are things that I've seen recently convinced me that the military today is better prepared than they've been in an awful long time, and that the monies they are spending on the war weapons we need for the next war and not for the last, a common mistake that they're not making now. They're doing a good job.
Mayor Buttigieg, I'd like to go to you as the only veteran on stage.
That sounded like an endorsement for Donald J. Trump. Thank you, Mr. Bloomberg.
Can you weigh in on this?
Well, the first time I ever set foot in South Carolina, it was stepping off the bus that brought me to combat training near Fort Jackson. And that was to get ready to go to Afghanistan, where I saw that one of the things that kept me safe, just as sure as my body armor, was the fact that the flag on my shoulder represented a country that was known to keep its word. Our allies and our adversaries knew it. The president has torn that to shreds. And so the first thing we've got to do is restore the credibility of the United States. Second thing we got to do is make sure that we not only have the intelligence capabilities, and I guess I disagree with the mayor, I don't think we need to have ground troops anywhere terrorists can gather, because terrorists can gather anywhere in the world. But we do need intelligence capabilities and specialists on the ground. But what good is that if you have a president who won't listen to them? Right now, some of the biggest threats that we face are not only things like counterterrorism, but issues like global health security and the coronavirus that rely on the ability to listen to scientists, listen to your own intelligence, and coordinate with an international community that this president has alienated because his idea of a security strategy is a big wall.
I know it goes fast, but a minute 15 is really a long time. So we'd ask respectfully if you would all please try to keep to the time.
Good idea.
Senator Klobuchar, good idea, right, Mr. Vice President? Senator Klobuchar, today, as we were coming over here today, I promise, Mr. Vice President, we are going to get to you today.
You keep
I promise.
promising me that, but you haven't done it yet.
I've never broken a promise.
Well,
Senator Klobuchar, as we were coming over
Thank
today, there was breaking news from the CDC about the coronavirus. And so far, there have been 2,700 deaths globally. And so far in this country, there have been no deaths. But the CDC says this: it's not a matter of if the virus will spread here, but when. The question to you is this: would you close the borders to Americans who have been exposed to the coronavirus in order to prevent an outbreak here in this country?
Well, what we have to do is make sure that we have treatment for those Americans and that they are in a quarantine situation. We don't want to expose people, but we want to give them help. And I would agree when Mayor Bloomberg said that this president has not invested like he should have in his budget. He tried to cut back on the CDC. He tried to cut back on the international organization that would coordinate with the rest of the world. He hasn't yet really addressed the nation on this topic. I would do all of that. But I want to.
My question is this, though. Everybody complains about these cuts. Do they have any actual evidence that shows that those cuts will actually negatively affect the work that the CDC can do? I mean, because if they can still do their job at a smaller budget, then what's the problem? I'm not seeing where the big issue is here.
I'm going to take this out of politics right now and talk to the American people, because this is so serious. I'm not going to give my website right now. I'm going to give the CDC's website, which is cdc.gov, so that people keep checking in and they follow the rules and they realize what they have to do if they feel sick, and they call their health care provider. Because many doctors are saying it's just a matter of time before we're going to start seeing this here. And I think the answers, as president, what would I do? I would better coordinate throughout my presidency to be ready for the next pandemic and to prepare for this one. I would have better relations with our allies, and I would support, because I know the vaccine is out there in the head of some kid right now in school in Columbia, South Carolina, or Houston, Texas, and it's investing in education, so we are ready to lead again in the world.
Mr. Vice President, we reached a turning point today with the CDC, warning schools that they must prepare, that they might have to close. Members of the Trump administration saying we don't have enough medical masks if necessary. What would you do?
What we did with Ebola, I was part of making sure that pandemic did not get to the United States, saved millions of lives. And what we did, we set up, I helped set up that office in the presidency, in the president's office on diseases that are pandemic diseases.
But you did get some Ebola people in. You got them quarantined in New York, and then you actually were criticizing the people who were quarantined. This one lady in particular that was quarantined in New York. The administration then criticized the quarantine. So which one is it? You want to prevent Ebola or diseases to come, or you don't?
We increased the budget of the CDC. We increased the NIH budget. We should, if our president today, and he's wiped all that out. We did it. We stopped it. And the second thing I point out to you is that what I would do immediately is restore the funding. He cut the funding for CDC. He tried to cut the funding for NIH. He cut the funding for the entire effort. And here's the deal. I would be on the phone with China and making it clear, we are going to need to be in your country. You have to be open. You have to be clear. We have to know what's going on. We have to be there with you and insist on it and insist. I could get that done. No one up here has ever dealt internationally with any of these world leaders. I'm the only one that has.
Senator Sanders.
In the White House today, we have a self-described great genius. Self-described. And this great genius has told us that this coronavirus is going to end in 2 months. April is the magical day that this great scientist we have in the White House has determined. I wish I was kidding. That is what he said. What do we have to do? Whether or not the issue is climate change, which is clearly a global crisis requiring international cooperation, or infectious diseases like coronavirus requiring international cooperation.
Uh-oh, someone was koofing on stage. Uh-oh. Do they have masks to distribute there during the debate? What's going on?
We have to work and expand the World Health Organization. Obviously, we have to make sure the CDC, the NIH, our infectious departments are fully funded. This is a global problem. We've got to work with countries all over the world to solve it.
Senator, we're going to stay on the topic of foreign affairs. Margaret Brennan.
Thank you, Nora. Mayor Bloomberg, you've said that President Xi Jinping of China is not a dictator and that he is responsive to his constituents and that the U.S. must cooperate with Beijing. How far does that go? Would you allow Chinese firms to build critical U.S. infrastructure?
No, I would not. And I think the Chinese government has not been open. Their press, the freedom of press does not exist there. Their human rights record is abominable, and we should make a fuss, which we've been doing, I suppose. But we make no mistake about it. We have to deal with China if we're ever going to solve the climate crisis. We have to deal with them because our economies are inextricably linked. We would not be able to sell or buy the products that we need. And in terms of whether he's a dictator, he does serve at the behest of the Politburo, of their group of people. But there's no question he has an enormous amount of power. But he does play to his constituency. You can negotiate with him. That's exactly what we have to do. Make it seem that it's in his interest and it's in people's interest to do what we want to do. Follow the rules, particularly no stealing of intellectual property. Follow the rules in terms of the trade the agreements that we have are reciprocal and go equally in both directions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Vice President Biden,
Yes.
same question to you. Would you allow Chinese firms to build critical U.S. infrastructure?
No, I would not. And I spent more time with Xi Jinping than any world leader had by the time we left office. This is a guy who doesn't have a democratic with a small d bone in his body. This is a guy who is a thug who, in fact, has 1 million Uyghurs in reconstruction camps, meaning concentration camps. This is a guy who you see what's happening right now in Hong Kong. And this is a guy who I was able to convince should join the international agreement at the Paris Agreement, because guess what? They need to be involved. You can cooperate and you can also dictate exactly what they are. When in fact they said we're going to set up a no-fly zone, that you can't fly through our zone. He said, what do you expect me to do when I was over there? I said, we're going to fly right through it. We flew B-1 bombers through it. We got to make it clear. They must play by the rules.
Thank you, Mr.
Period,
President.
period.
Senator Warren, same question. Would you allow Chinese firms to build infrastructure?
We have to be able to trust our president, because there are a lot of decisions a president makes that you just can't follow every part of that. And that's one of the reasons that we need to see any candidate's taxes. We know that Mayor Bloomberg has been doing business with China for a long
Nice dodge of the question. She's not even addressing the question whatsoever.
long time, and he is the only one on the stage who has not released his taxes. He plans to release them after Super Tuesday. It is not enough to be able to say, just trust me on this. We have a president who said he was going to release his taxes after the election and has refused to do this. No, I would not.
Okay. Mayor Bloomberg, would you like to respond?
I got into this race only 10 or 12 weeks ago. We've been working on our tax returns. I've said they'll be out. We probably have another couple of weeks left to go. We're doing it as fast as we can. We've complied with every single requirement for disclosure. And when I was mayor of New York, we had our tax returns out 12 years in a row, and we will do that in the White House.
Actually,
you can find my tax returns online right now.
Can I?
On the question asked. Mr. Steyer.
I released my tax returns.
Yeah.
That was easy to do. But I want to say something
How many years?
about foreign policy. 10 years. I want to say something about foreign policy, which is this. We keep acting as if we're in the 20th century or the 19th century. If you look at the biggest threats to the United States, we're talking right now about coronavirus that cannot be solved within the borders of the United States. We're talking about climate change, which is a global problem where we need U.S. leadership for countries around the world. In fact, Mr. Trump's policy of us going it alone, of America first, of having no values, no allies, and no strategy is disastrous for us. The biggest threat to America right now, in terms of our safety of our citizens, is climate, and it's time for us to deal with it that way. Every single foreign policy issue is about American leadership and coalition.
New topic.
If climate is such a big problem, why can't scientists provide real predictions that actually are accurate? Why can't all the data models be accurate instead of inaccurate or manipulated to push a narrative? Why has there been like 20 different predictions of 20 different varieties between global cooling, global warming, people poofing into a blue vapor in the early 1980s? Why is climate such a big problem, yet it's only been a small period of time where human beings may have had an impact, and throughout the entire existence of the earth you had such wild variations in temperatures and human beings weren't even involved, yet somehow minor tiny things that we did in only 100 or so years somehow pushed the planet out of alignment? I don't buy that sort of argument, I'm sorry. Now, that doesn't mean that people can't do what they need to do to prevent pollution. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with trying to have clean water and preventing waste going into the oceans and rivers and things like that. Yeah, that's perfectly fine. But saying that this is the crisis of the century or the millennium, no.
Senator Sanders.
Can I say one word on...
It's in the same theme, sir. You've praised the Chinese Communist Party for lifting more people out of extreme poverty than any other country. You also have a track record of expressing sympathy for socialist governments in Cuba and in Nicaragua. Can Americans trust that a democratic socialist president will not give authoritarians a free pass?
I have opposed authoritarianism all over the world, and I was really amazed at what Mayor Bloomberg just said a moment ago. He said that the Chinese government is responsive to the Politburo. But who the hell is the Politburo responsive to? Who elects the Politburo? You got a real dictatorship there? Of course you have a dictatorship in Cuba. What I said is what Barack Obama said in terms of Cuba, that Cuba made progress on education. Yes, I think, really? Really?
Yes, because there's no comparing those two
What Barack Obama said is they made great progress on education and health care. That was Barack Obama.
I talked to Barack Obama.
Excuse me. Occasionally, it might be a good idea to be honest about American foreign policy. And that includes the fact that America has overthrown governments all over the world, in Chile, in Guatemala, in Iran. And when dictatorships...
Yeah, the United States was overthrowing dictators and authoritarians. That's what America was trying to do. They were trying to liberate people from people like Castro, like people like Maduro of Venezuela. You moron!
Whether it is the Chinese or the Cubans do something good, you acknowledge that. But you don't have trade love letters with them.
This is 2020. We can't be reliving the Cold War.
Barack Obama was abroad. He was in a town meeting. He did not in any way suggest that there was anything positive about the Cuban government. He acknowledged that they did increase life expectancy. But he went on and condemned the dictatorship. He went on and condemned the people who, in fact, had run that committee.
Nonsense. Obama was licking the ass of Castro, was trying to remove the Cuban embargo that the United States had. He was praising them, went to like a baseball game with them. Are you kidding me? That's absolute malarkey.
Also made sure to make it clear, and by the way, I called to make sure that I was prepared to, I never say in my private conversation with him, but the fact of the matter is, he in fact did not, has never embraced an authoritarian regime and does not now. Okay. This man said that in fact he thought he did not condemn what they did.
That is untrue, categorically untrue.
What did you tell him?
I have condemned authoritarianism, whether it is the people in Saudi Arabia that the United States government has
Cuba,
loved
Nicaragua?
for years, Cuba, Nicaragua. Authoritarianism of any stripe is bad. But that is different than saying that governments occasionally do things that are good.
Look,
that's what Barack Obama said.
The only way we're going to restore American credibility, the only way we can do this is to actually win the presidency. And I am not looking forward to a scenario where it comes down to Donald Trump with his nostalgia for the social order of the 1950s and Bernie Sanders with a nostalgia for the revolutionary politics of the 1960s. This is not about what coups were happening in the 1970s or 80s. This is about the future. This is about 2020. We are not going to survive or succeed, and we're certainly not going to win by reliving the Cold War. And we're not going to win these critical House and Senate races if people in those races have to explain why the nominee of the Democratic Party is telling people to look at the bright side of the Castro regime. We've got to be a lot smarter about this and look to the future.
Senator Sanders, your response.
Let us be clear. Do we think health care for all, Pete, is some kind of radical communist idea? Do we think raising the minimum wage to a living wage? Do we think building the millions?
It is a communist idea, you commie.
Of units of affordable housing that we need? Do we think raising taxes on billionaires is a radical idea?
Let's talk about what's radical about that plan.
Reform
Senator,
is a radical idea.
The things you just named.
Do we think immigration reform? The truth is, Pete, that the American people support my agenda. That is why I am beating Trump in virtually every poll that has done, and why I will defeat him.
We got to open this up. Universal health care for
Donald Trump's worst nightmare is having someone that the people in the middle who are tired of the insults and the extremes in our politics have someone to vote for. And I was going to comment on Cuba policy because I actually lead the bill to lift the embargo. I went with Barack Obama when he went to Cuba, and I've seen firsthand how the Cuban people are way in front of their leaders. They like America. They want to be entrepreneurs. And the way that we embrace them and not the socialist regime is by opening up Cuba and starting to do business with them. But to get at what we were...
Yeah, but you can't do business if the communist regime, or socialist regime, if you want to call it that, if that dictatorship keeps things restricted in such a way that maybe they make you, they allow a modicum of business, but not actually really open up their markets. Because they're not going to fully open it because they don't want Americans to be in there. People from Cuba and Venezuela have come to this country specifically stating the ills of socialism, the ills of communism, the ills of those dictatorships, and these people don't get it.
Just talking about, I just think we have a huge choice. Super Tuesday states, 1/3 of America will vote. Do you want to have someone in charge of this ticket? Could I finish, Mark?
Well, you're
we
at
want to
time,
have someone
Senator.
in charge of this ticket who wants to put forward $60 trillion in spending, 3 times the
Thank you,
American
Bill.
economy.
Bill
I don't
Whitaker?
think we do. I think that we can get all those bold, progressive things done without having someone that is so alienating that we're going to turn off the voters that we need to bring
You're
with
going to
us.
let us go.
You have to allow the senator to respond. Senator
Can I respond?
Sanders,
I'm going to respond to the question that
Amy
Senator
used
Sanders
the word
raised.
alienating. Hey, Amy.
Yes,
My
Bernie?
favorability nationally, I believe, are the highest up here, as a matter of fact. All right? But the point is, the way we are going to beat Trump, which is what everybody up here wants, is we need a campaign of energy and excitement. We need to have the largest voter turnout in the history of the United States. We need to bring working people back into the Democratic Party. We need to get young people voting in a way they have never done before. That is what our campaign is about.
Bill Whitaker has the floor.
Vice President Biden.
Yes.
The bipartisan Senate Select Committee on Intelligence report concluded Russia interfered in our last presidential election, and the Obama administration failed to respond forcefully. U.S. intelligence says Russia's at it again. If it is proven that Russia has interfered in the 2020 elections, would you, as president, launch a retaliatory cyber attack?
I would make them pay for it, and I make them pay for it economically. They are engaged now, as I speak, in interfering in our elections. They were engaged, and when in fact we were the last election in 2016 against Hillary. They were. There's no question. This man stood before the whole world, turned to the Russian leader and said, why in God's name would this man ever interfere in our elections? Give me a break. 17 intelligence agencies said he did. When we got the information, we went to the committee in the Senate that's responsible for knowing these issues and dealing with them. We went to Mitch McConnell and said, join us and point out what is happening here. He said, no, we want no part of it. And if we had moved, we didn't have all the information at that time until after the election was over. And so the idea the bipartisan committee said we could have done more, theoretically,
that is bullcrap, okay? As soon as you know that a foreign country is quote-unquote interfering in your elections, there are plenty of things that you can do, plenty of steps that you can take to try and stop that interference, such as sanctions, such as counter counter measures, cyber countermeasures against hackers. Try and trace these people. Try and trace back and find where the hacking is coming from. Take down their networks. Go in diplomatically to talk to the leaders. Raise a stink with the media and the press, but the press was too busy protecting you and your buddy president's dumbass. That was the problem. Nobody wanted to admit the problem. Now it became a Russia thing because all of a sudden the candidate that you wanted didn't win, and the candidate you didn't want won. Oh, now it became a big problem with foreign interference. Before, you didn't care, and Obama even tried to change elections in Israel, okay, and other countries. So don't tell me that all of a sudden you're this big macho fighter against foreign interference.
that's true. But the fact of the matter is we didn't have the information till the end. And so, look, we, in fact, should be imposing sanctions on Russia now for their interference.
Mr. Steyer.
Look, 21st century warfare is cyber warfare. What we're having is an attack by a hostile foreign power on our democracy right now.
Right.
The question you have to ask is, where's the commander-in-chief? And let me say this.
We don't have one.
This isn't news. What Vice President Biden said is true. He did stand next to Vladimir Putin. There was a hostile foreign attack on our election last time, and the president sided with the hostile foreign power. That's why I started need to impeach.
Yes, but what Trump was talking about was all the accusations that Russia was helping him directly through this Russian collusion story. That's where the lie is, and the lie has always been and always will be. Russia did not collude with Trump. Trump did not collude with Russia. If Russia was interfering in our election, sure, they were running ads. You had some hacking at the DNC, things of that nature. But was that colluding? No, that was Russian interference by itself. Plus, I still have not seen what Russian entities were connected to the Russian government that did these hacks and interference. Were these run by the government or not? Of all these years of Russia, I still don't see anything about that. You know, I wish I had some information about that.
That's what we have to do. We have to oppose a president who sides with a hostile foreign power that commits cyber warfare against the United States of America. That's where we are. Where are all these patriotic Republicans who wave the flag, but when we're actually under attack, they side with our enemies? It's outrageous. That's why he should have been impeached. They covered it up, and I was years before these people. There's something wrong here. We're under attack, and they're not doing a darn thing about it.
Thank you, Mr. Steyer.
Look,
Major.
the way to deter
Senator Sanders. Senator Sanders, I have a question for you, sir. You're the front runner in this race. You're on the ballot in South Carolina. Mayor Bloomberg, you'll understand that preamble in just a second. If elected, Senator Sanders, you would be America's first Jewish president. You recently called a very prominent, well-known American Israel lobby a platform for, quote, bigotry. What would you say to American Jews who might be concerned you're not, from their perspective, supportive enough of Israel? And specifically, sir, would you move the U.S. Embassy back to Tel Aviv?
Let me just, the answer is it's something that we would take into consideration.
Which would
but here, excuse me. But here is the point. I am very proud of being Jewish. I actually lived in Israel for some months. But what I happen to believe is that right now, sadly, tragically, in Israel, through Bibi Netanyahu, you have a reactionary racist who is now running that country. And I happen to believe that what our foreign policy in the Mideast should be about is absolutely protecting the independence and security of Israel. But you cannot ignore the suffering of the Palestinian people. We have got to have a policy that reaches out to the Palestinians and the Americans. And in answer to your question, that will come within the context of bringing nations together in the Mideast.
Mayor Bloomberg, would you like to weigh in on that, please?
Well, the battle's been going on for a long time in the Middle East, whether it's the Arabs versus the Persians, the Shias versus the Sunnis, the Jews in Israel and the Palestinians. It's only gone on for 40 or 50 years. Number one, you can't move the embassy back. We should not have done it without getting something from the Israeli government, but it was done, and you're going to have to leave it there. Number two, the only solution here is a two-state solution. The Palestinians have to be accommodated. The real problem here is you have two groups of people, both of who think God gave them the same piece of land. And the answer is to obviously split it up, leave the Israeli borders where they are, try to push them to pull back some of those extra on the other side of the wall where they've built these new communities, which they should not have done that. Pull it back.
Mayor Bloomberg, thank you very much. Senator Warren.
Look, the way we have to think about this is I think we have to start with the values and what has to be protected here. Israelis have a right to security, and the Palestinians have a right to be treated with dignity and to have self-determination. That is a two-state solution. But it's not up to us to determine what the terms of a two-state solution are. We want to be a good ally to everyone in the region. The best way to do that is to encourage the parties to get to the negotiating table themselves. Donald Trump's big mistake is he keeps putting a thumb on the scale on just one side, and that moves the parties further away from working out their own solution here. We need to be an ally by supporting them to come to negotiate to find a lasting
But Senator
peace.
Warren, just on the question of the embassy, what was your position
It
on
is
that?
not ours to do.
Would you move it back?
It is not ours to do. We should let...
The embassy is U.S. soil in a foreign land. It is ours to do. What are you talking about, crazy lady? Pocahontas, here's a little lesson for you. When you go into an embassy on foreign land, you're on U.S. soil. Okay? Maybe being from Indian descent, you don't get that. Oh, Native American, I'm sorry. But if the if the embassy is in Jerusalem, where it is now, you have say over what happens in that embassy. If it were attacked, our soldiers could go and defend it because it's ours. Okay? So this is nonsense what she's saying.
The parties determine
Would you
the
move it back
capitals.
or not?
Our
Yes or no?
embassy should let the parties determine the capitals themselves.
Nora?
I want to turn now to the issue of North Korea, because President Trump has engaged in direct diplomacy, meeting directly with Kim Jong-un. Senator Klobuchar, if you were commander-in-chief, would you meet with the North Korean leader?
I would, but not in the way this president has done it. He literally thinks he can go over and bring a hot dish to the dictator next door, and he thinks everything's going to be fine. He has not done it with our allies. He has literally just hastily called summits and run off. That is no way to do it, and as you can see, North Korea is emboldened. They're still launching missiles. They promised a Christmas surprise that thankfully never happened, and he has not been able to advance the ball at all. So what would I do? I would work with our allies, and it has been pointed out, this is what this president fails at all the time. We should be negotiating ourselves back into the Iran nuclear agreement. We should be working with Russia not only to stand up for the protection of our elections and call Vladimir Putin out for what he is, the ruthless dictator that takes down planes, that poisons dissidents, but that also at the same time we have to acknowledge that we should be renegotiating the New START treaty and the other arms negotiations that must happen. This president just likes to do tweets at 4 a.m. in his bathrobe, gets out there and doesn't achieve the results we need. I would meet with him, but I would do it with our allies. I would have clear deliverables, and I would achieve those deliverables.
Mr. Vice President, how would you deal with North Korea?
You don't negotiate with a dictator, give him legitimacy without...
Except if it's Iran, but that's besides the point, right, Biden?
Any notion whether he is going to do anything at all. You don't do that. Look what happened. He gave this dictator, he's a thug, legitimacy. We've weakened the sanctions around the world against holding committing people not to trade anything from oil to parts that they can deal with providing missile technology. And what's happened? It's been weakened. I would be in Beijing. I would be speaking with Xi Jinping. I would be reassigning the relationship between Japan and South Korea, and I would make it clear. I'd make it clear to China, we are going to continue to move closer to make sure that we can, in fact, prevent North Korea from launching missiles to take them down. And if we don't, why am I stopping? No one else stops.
Okay. Okay, sir.
That's my Catholic school training.
Okay, go.
Vice President Biden, you're a gentleman. Good home training. Thank you, sir.
Gentlemen don't get very well treated up here.
Margaret Brennan.
Thank you very much, Nora. This is a question for Mayor Buttigieg. As you know, viewers and voters are participating in this through Twitter. The city of Idlib in Syria is facing an unprecedented humanitarian crisis. The Syrian regime and Russia are targeting schools, bakeries, and hospitals. What would you do as president to push back regime and Russian forces and stop the killing of innocent civilians?
First of all, I stand with the people of Idlib, who are being targeted, as you said, in a brutal fashion by a dictatorship that has already been so brutal for so many years. And this is one of the reasons we have got to change the balance of power in the region, because the president has basically vanished from the stage when it comes to even playing a role in the future there. Turkey, Russia, Iran all have so much more of a say than we do. We don't have to be invading countries to be making a difference, working with our international partners in order to deliver peace and support those who are standing up for self-determination. Now, I want to come back to something, and I promise it relates to international affairs, because
I want to just briefly interject here. I don't like the implication of that we go and invade countries. Those countries in the Middle East, usually when there's intervention of the United States, they are asked. Okay, these countries ask us to interfere and provide support for whatever issues they have for the most part. And if we've been attacked, we have every right to go to those countries that are involved in the attack and retaliate. We have every right to do that. We have to defend ourselves and our borders and our people.
Senator Sanders asked me a question earlier. He asked the question of whether health care for everybody is a radical idea. And it's not, which is why I'm for it. Very much in a different way, though. What is a radical idea is completely eliminating all private...
Yes, Mom Patch, intervene. Thank you. This debate is hurting my brain.
Insurance. And part of how you know it is that no industrialized country has gone that far. He and I both like to talk about Denmark, for example. But even in Denmark, they have not abolished the possibility of private insurance. So this is an idea that goes further than what is acceptable in Denmark, the country, let alone imagining how that's going to fly in Denmark, South Carolina.
Thank you, Mayor. Senator Warren, would you like to respond? What would you do? What would Senator Warren do to stop the mass murder?
I'm sorry.
Same question. What would you do to stop the mass murder in Idlib, Syria?
Look, I think that what we've got to do is we have to provide humanitarian relief. We need to work with our allies on this, but this is not a moment for military intervention. We have got to use our military only when we see a military problem that can be solved militarily. We cannot send our military in unless we have a plan to get them out. So for me, this is about working with our allies. It is about standing with the people who are under enormous pressure right now. This is recognizing what Donald Trump has put us in a terrible box around the world. But the solution is not to use our military. The solution is to use the other tools here.
Thank you, Senator.
Well, we've talked a lot about your policies during this debate. Now we'd like to get a little more personal. I know, Senator Sanders, how much you enjoy that. We're going to ask you when we come back from the break about the words you live by. We're going to give you a couple of minutes to gather your thoughts, and we'll be right back.
God, I hope this is just the last part where everybody just gives their little statement and this ends. Oh, this has not been a pleasant experience, kids. I'm gonna need an aspirin after this. I am not kidding. Listening to these people is doing nothing but give me a headache. It seriously is. Oh. Like, really? No, but kind of what I was saying before regarding foreign policy. I mean, foreign policy is tricky business. It's definitely tricky business. You don't, as much as I disagree with Elizabeth Warren on a lot of stuff. I'm getting there, Mom Patch. I feel the beginnings of it, but I'm pretty sure that I can. Once this whole circus is done, I'm gonna lay down. I'm gonna have some nice tea or something to drink, get myself some Excedrin, and I think I'll be good to go. See, chat, I suffer for you people. You should be thankful, okay? No, but foreign policy is a tricky thing. Foreign policy is definitely a tricky thing, and you do want to carry that big stick and use it only when it's absolutely necessary. That is one thing that I kind of have to agree with Warren. But the thing is, that's also Trump's stance. Trump has had a very non-interventionist stance. Only get involved when necessary. Don't want to have a large presence in the Middle East. And let's see, Soldat says we need someone like Rand Paul as Secretary of State. We're way too overstressed. That may not be a bad idea. I don't know. Rand Paul doesn't seem to be someone like, he's very good with economic issues, constitutional issues. I'm not sure that Rand Paul is really a guy that's good with. I never see them really put forth a large amount of wisdom. Let's put it that way. Wisdom when it comes to foreign policies, dealing with the foreign actors, dealing with kind of these crises in the Middle East. Not to say that he wouldn't have the ability to do so. I just haven't heard a whole lot from him that would exude confidence in me about that. I feel that Rand Paul is the kind of person that he has a very big libertarian focus on money and laws and the Constitution and the economy, things like that. So Soldat is saying the party boxes him out when it comes to foreign policy and the press plays along. Maybe they do, but on the few things that I've heard him say when it comes to foreign policy, I don't know. I would have to look back. I would have to look back at what he said in the past and see if there's more to him in foreign policy issues than what I've seen. Because maybe I just haven't heard him say enough on it. Maybe I haven't heard enough of the sound bites. I haven't seen him enough in the media. Maybe, as you're saying, there's a shutout of that. So that's a possibility. That's definitely a possibility that he's not given enough of a platform. But the thing is, he's had a good amount of platform for a while. So by now he's had to have something out there to kind of support his views. So that would be my thought about that when it comes to Rand Paul. I think Pompeo's been doing a pretty decent job. I don't think that he's been doing a terrible job or anything like that. I don't know. I think that in the past we have had Secretary of States that were pretty gung-ho about intervention, and I don't think I agree with that 100%. I think intervention is required when it's required, but let's go back here.
This is the final segment of the final debate before the first in the South primary this Saturday and Super Tuesday 1 week from today. Gail?
All right, one final question, candidates, and it's a two-parter. First, I'd like you each to tell us the biggest misconception about you. That's number one. Number two, the South Carolina motto is this: while I breathe, I hope. So outside of politics, in no more than 45 seconds or so, what is your personal motto, your personal belief, your favorite quote that represents you? Mr. Steyer, the biggest misconception, and then your motto.
The biggest misconception about me is that somehow I'm defined by business success and money.
Okay, and your motto?
My motto: every day I write a cross on my hand to remind myself to tell the truth and do what's right, no matter what.
All right, thank you, Mr. Steyer. Senator Klobuchar?
I'd say the biggest misconception is that I'm boring, because I'm not. Then I would say that my motto is the words of one of my political mentors, Paul Wellstone, who's sadly no longer with us. And he said that politics is about improving people's lives. And that's been my life. From when my grandpa was an iron ore miner and the unions, politics made those mines safer. And when my dad needed treatment, it was there for him, and in his words, he was pursued by grace. And when my mom got divorced and she didn't have a job and she went back to teaching, and that gift of public service got her through. And then when our daughter was born
Senator
and
Klobuchar,
she couldn't
what was your
swallow,
motto?
that
I'm
was
sorry.
my life.
Senator Klobuchar,
oh, I
what
thought
was
we
your
had a
motto?
minute to answer the question.
No, what was your motto? I'm sorry.
My motto was that politics is about improving people's lives.
Got it. Vice President Biden? Biggest misconception?
It's a pretty good one.
It was a very good one.
Thank
Very
you.
good one.
Thank you.
When you get knocked down, get up, and everyone's entitled to be treated with dignity, no matter what, no matter who they are. also that everyone should be represented. No one's better than me, and I'm no better than anyone else. The fact is, what we should be doing, we talked about the Supreme Court. I'm looking forward to making sure there's a black woman on the Supreme Court to make sure we, in fact, get every representation. Not a joke. Not a joke.
Yeah, because everybody knows that having a dark-colored skin and a vagina automatically qualifies you to be on the Supreme Court. Doesn't matter if you have any real experience or any real understanding of the Constitution or law, black and vagina, you're in.
I pushed very hard for that. And
Vice
my
President?
mother's motto was, she said, you're defined by your courage, you're redeemed by your loyalty. I am loyal, I do what I say.
What's the biggest misconception about you, sir?
I have more hair than I think I do.
There's a way to fix that, Senator Sanders.
Misconception.
Yes.
Misconception, and you're hearing it here tonight, is that the ideas I'm talking about are radical. They're not. In one form or another, they exist in countries all over the world. Healthcare is a human right. We have the necessity.
You mean there's a chance for me to get on the Supreme Court if I use spray paint and a knife? If I transition? Is that what you're saying?
Moral imperative to address the existential threat of climate change. Other countries are doing that. We don't need more people in jail, disproportionately African American, than any other country on earth.
Why can't you morons just answer the damn question? Misconception, quote, done. Do you have to do a soliloquy every godforsaken time? Oh my God.
Not a radical idea. The motto, the saying that moves me the most is from Nelson Mandela. And Mandela said, everything is impossible until it happens. And that means if we have the guts to stand up to powerful special interest who are doing phenomenally well, if we can bring working people together, black and white and Latino, we can create a nation
all right, Senator
where
Sanders,
all people have a good
Senator
standard of
Warren,
living.
Senator Warren.
Well, I suppose one misconception is that I don't eat very much. In fact, I eat all the time.
I thought she was going to say the misconception was that she was of Native American descent.
Because I get teased about this. Look,
No,
I never was
no.
supposed to be.
Trust me, nobody teases you about eating, lady. All right? Pocahontas, nobody teases you about eating. I just want to make that absolutely clear. All right.
Be on a stage like this. And the misconception is that I thought I should be president of the United States. No, I got into this because I am a fighter. My motto ties in directly to this. It's Matthew 25. And that is, inasmuch as ye hath done it unto one of these, the least of thy brethren, ye hath done it unto me. For me, this is about how we treat other people and how we lift them up. That is why I am in this fight. That is why I am running to be president. And it is why I will be an effective president.
Thank you, Senator. Mayor Buttigieg.
Well, I think the biggest misconception is that I'm not passionate. I get that I'm kind of level. Some say unflappable. I don't think you want a president who's flappable. But it's precisely because I'm so passionate about the things that are going on in this country that I consider it important to approach all of that with discipline. My disciplines are guided by the mottos I try to live by.
Gee, Gallon, you're going to make me ruin the stream by laughing over it.
Many of which come from Scripture. And just to be clear, I would never impose my interpretation of my religion on anybody. Just as sure as I'm wearing this ring, I'll never let that happen to anybody. But I seek to live by the teachings that say that if you would be a leader, you must first be a servant. And of course, the teaching, not unique to the Christian tradition, but a big part of it, that holds that we are to treat others as we would be treated. And when I think about everything at stake, from racial and economic justice to our stewardship of the climate, to the need to heal the sick and the need to heal this country, I seek for those teachings to order my steps as I go through this campaign and as I go through life.
Thank you. Mayor Bloomberg.
Misconception that I'm 6 feet tall. And quote, I've trained for this job for a long time, and when I get it, I'm going to do something rather than just talk about it.
All right. Thank you, candidates. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. That concludes our debate.
No, we have time for one more break, Nora, one more break. Time flies when you're having fun. You're watching the Democratic debate right here on CBS.
One more break. What's left after this? Their closing statements? But wasn't this already kind of like their closing statements? And also, Bloomberg, trust me, there's no misconception about your height. You're an Oompa Loompa. I mean, there's really no misconception about that. I love how these people view themselves. Because Bloomberg knows he's a manlet. Alright? That's why he makes the joke. Or a poor attempt at making that joke. Next up, pontification. Yes. He is an Oompa Loompa. And plus his head is huge. Is it just me? But his head is too big for his body. It doesn't look right. You want me to turn TTS on? Alright. Let's try and turn it on. See what happens.
At Senator Hitler. Nigger. You can use alcohol for heavy powdered areas, then apply light coat of gun oil. Needs more spray tan with all that Trump he is failing to emulate.
Don't get me banned off of platforms. Periscope already showed me. They terminated my stream right at the beginning of the debate. So now I'm gonna have to fight with them again. They already did this at one of the debates. Yeah.
I'm Mike Bloomberg and I approve the next message. Oh no, Abyss.
Yeah.
You come on, come on, come on. I've been taking care of my guns since I was 6. No.
For streaming the
what?
debate, Mom Patch. For streaming
You'll find a few like-minded trolls and chatters here as well. I agree, gaming streaming has been done to fucking death. Inward. The White House looks better with tiny furniture. Bloomberg 2020. Periscope. You needed to show more nipple, then you're fine.
I needed to show more nipple?
We know a lot about a lot. Wow. At Steve Dave.
Oh, we're back.
Bunch of in-words.
Hold on. Let me turn
I've
TDS
been loading
off.
my guns since I was with my friends at Columbine. I just overslept.
That concludes our debate. We want to thank the candidates, the moderators, and to you watching at home tonight.
And a reminder that the primary here in South Carolina is this Saturday. The next Tuesday, of course, Super Tuesday. CBS News will have special coverage.
And our coverage of tonight's debate will continue in a moment from the Spin Room here on CBS and on our streaming news service, CBSN. There will be more about the debate as well on your late local news on this CBS station.
All right, that's enough. Thank the Lord this is gone. Oh, hallelujah. Hallelujah. It's over. All right, TTS back on. Oh my Lord. But yeah, they did this at the last debate. Twitch actually...
Show me another live stream of a guy doing gun maintenance in a group of guys sharing tips and knowledge to help each other. TBH. Doing game stream is for low effort.
Yeah, that was just a commercial
break. It was just
break.
for a commercial break, WTF.
Yeah, I know, right?
At Dispatch.
How ridiculous. So that was the debate,
America
ladies and
decides,
gentlemen.
Change the sign.
Hold on.
America choose Trump. I do game stream sometime.
I gotta turn off TTS just for a moment here because I just want to do a little quick spiel here. So this was the debate number 10 As the people said, the moderator said, next Tuesday is Super Tuesday. I'm going to be doing a stream this Thursday. So please be sure to tune in. Hopefully, I'll be able to get Periscope back up before then. We'll see what happens with that. And I'm not going to shut the stream off just yet. I'm going to hang out for another maybe 10, 15 minutes here. But we're pretty much reaching the end of the debate. If you guys have any questions, any comments, you have things you want to ask me about, what I thought about this debate, by all means, you can do that. I'll turn TTS back on in a moment. I just got to do my little spiel here. And if you want to support this channel, I mean, just look what happened with Periscope. They shut me down. They shut me down because they don't want me to debate to stream the debate, a public debate.
These donations sound.
They don't want people to participate
Hope
in that.
Hillary wins Super Tuesday.
Whoops. They don't want people to participate in that. So please support channels like mine because we're being shut down left and right. Periscope just did that right now during the stream. So streamlabs.com/theeternalabyss. Support any way you can. Any level of generosity is appreciated. And here we are at the end of the stream almost. I'm going to turn TTS back on.
During the debate.
I'm not going to go.
Make sure to hit all the highlights.
I'm not going to go through all the debate again.
At
but
Purple Heart Mave. They don't sound like they're coming from speakers. I went in for manufacturing engineering.
I was hit by a copyright thing last time.
At the Eternal Abyss you might have gotten hit by the DMC that just hit Twitch streamers.
Yeah.
Now I do software though. At Troll Go PJ. Oh no. He wants money.
I want money only if people want to give it.
And proud. One in gasoline automotive and one in diesel automotive.
I mean, I would love to do the streaming full time.
I didn't finish LOL.
But
of SS.
It has to be worth it, unfortunately, for me to do so. I can't just give up all my other
Why does it say
responsibilities.
Judeo-Christian values? Are you for cutting kids' dicks off? Oy vey, what about the 6 gorillion? Plus dash dash plus the plus dash dash plus eternal plus dash dash plus abyss plus dash 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 plus plus dash plus plus.
Plus plus.
At dispatch weight manufacturing engineering. What kind of stuff?
I think my chat got
hit that like
borked
button and
here
click the Bitwave
in
notification
the...
bell. Notabis Thelast J Notabis Supreme Notabis Thelast J Notabis. Notabis Thelast J Notabis Supreme Notabis Thelast J Notabis. Diesel runs off compression and gas off of spark. At Misri CNC CAD/cam.
Anyway.
At dispatch OMG, that's what I used to do.
Okay, so chat's back. There's
at Misri
my chat has been kind of wonky here on stream.
My name is the Eternal Israel. I support Israel 100%. What the fuck just happened?
No, I don't support anybody any country 100% except America.
How do they work? TDS is so funny XD.
TTS is funny, actually, yeah.
At 88 SLLS by sharing atoms. Do it again.
What happened? What are you talking about? The woo 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 woo? Is that what you're talking about?
It's interesting. I love what I do, but I work nearly all day to improve things, find streamers, reach out to people, etc. I work way more for myself, but I love it. At Ninja 420 mind blown. The boss taught the shop I used to work at was such a cheap ass.
I need a more cultured sounding TTS. Well, let's see what options I have here.
Sounding TDS. Scrap apart, fuck up the job. Do a TDS stream Thursday.
I might turn it on Thursday. I don't know. We'll see.
Soy.
Let's see. Show TTS here.
Which of those faggots was in favor 12-year term limits? That's actually a good idea.
That was Steyer.
Use German thought.
I only have two English options, and they seem both the same. I don't see any different option. I'm using light chat for the TTS,
Then
by the
build
way.
guns after graduation for resale. Why watch? Anything else besides Abyss RRRRRRRRRR? Use Spania thought.
I don't have
Spanish.
any other thoughts. I only have one. Oh. I feel I have to do something to end the stream in a lighter note.
Good on you, man. LOL. So SDI is a good place to learn from. It had me interested, but I've always kinda stayed away from places that are strictly online.
No, I don't want to set myself on fire.
25 for FFL cert, right?
That sounds
DS
painful.
nuts. Lad. Nigger.
What the hell was that?
LOL. Are you saying age is just a number? It's 21.
Good lord.
But if you scream painfully, it's a lighter note. Surprised face. At
My
least in
screaming
Cali, I
painfully is a
think.
lighter note. I'll have to take that under consideration, but I still don't want to set myself on fire. I have work tomorrow. That wouldn't bode well.
FFL is 21, yay. Gotcha. In this case, I agree.
But anyway, some final thoughts here. I think I'll put some final thoughts on the whole debate thing. I gotta turn off the
Age
TTS
is just
here.
a number.
So, some final thoughts. I think that nobody in this debate really, I think, performed very well. It's basically just a continuation of what we've already seen. It's pure chaos. There's a whole bunch of self-immolation. There's not a whole lot of substantive talking. There's not a whole lot of policy talking. It's a lot of, orange man bad. Racism is everywhere. Justice, justice, justice. All this kind of nonsense. So I don't really see anything put up on the table here that would entice anybody, especially someone that's like maybe on the fence, that they're not sure who they want to vote for democratically, but also in general. Let's say there's some independents that they're not sure if they want to be on the Trump train or they want to vote for a Democrat. If you look at these candidates, I see nothing in them that would really... One, any policy that they're putting forth is actually, like, pro-American. There really isn't. Especially Bernie. You take Bernie and he's saying, let's do stuff that other countries are doing. Who cares about America? Let's do what other countries are doing. Well, why? First of all, those other countries have implemented things in a way that works maybe, kinda, not really in some cases, for that country. Not specifically for our country. We have a different history, we have a different demographic, we have different economies and financial intricacies of our country. We have a different just sheer number of population, and our economies and trade are set up differently. So to go forward and say, well, I like that Denmark did this thing, we should do it here. Well, no, that's very simple. That's a simple way of thinking. That is not a high level way of thinking. And we shouldn't just make these sort of decisions of that kind. You know? That's stupid. Especially when a lot of these ideas that he's putting forth, they're socialism, they're communism, they're nothing Democrat about it. But it's not just that train wave. The other thing is, the reason why those kind of socialist programs sort of work is because they're getting a lot of funding from the United States. Their defense budgets, for example, like in those countries that have more socialist welfare programs, are paid by us, by the American taxpayer. We're supporting Norway. We're supporting Denmark. We're paying for a lot of their defense. Of course they're not going to be able, they're going to be able to support certain social programs because they don't have nearly as much money to pay for everything. Yes, their defense budget, we're included in that. So it makes sense for them to say, well, yeah, we have all these social programs because we don't have to put all our money into it. We only put a portion of our money into it, while the other portion for other things that our government has to deal with, we don't have to worry too much about that. And that's the other thing too. That is true, Trainwave. With all this influx of migrants that are coming from all these other countries, all these systems are being heavily taxed and burdened. You have a large amount of people that are on these systems now, and it wasn't designed for that. It just wasn't at all. So that's a big problem that these countries are facing. That's why, you have countries like Italy and France, and that's why the UK separated itself from Brexit, because it couldn't manage the finances that way. Soldat says that Bernie is a Fidel Castro acolyte when it comes down to it. So are a ton of modern leftists. There have been left-wing bureaucrats in the federal government that have been arrested for spying for Cuba, and for China, and for other countries as well. There's a large infiltration of socialism within all of our institutions, be it educational, government, medical, judicial. It's actually quite frightening how pervasive this is. It's a cancer, basically. It's definitely a cancer. Well, it's true that hegemony does play a role, Trainwave. I do agree that being a homogenous society has played a big role in the somewhat success of those programs, because I would argue, even if those programs provide what they're out to provide, you're still being taxed through the wazoo. So Italy is another example of this, where you have socialized medicine, you have very, very, very low cost for education, but the quality of healthcare is not good. The quality of education is not good. Very few institutions stand out. Those are usually private ones, both in medical and educational, and then those cost more money, and you're still taxed through the ass. You pay over 40, if not about 50% of your income is in taxes. You lose half of your income, just taxes, and that's before you have to pay anything else, like bills, rent, if you pay rent, or a mortgage, or your vehicle maintenance, food, shelter, clothing. So social programs on paper may sound good, but in practice, they are not practical. They will cost too much. They will balloon. Instead, what needs to happen is the cost of providing these things need to be made transparent. There has to be a push for the markets to force them to be competitive. A forceful competition through transparency, I feel, would be the best approach, because if you know why a ambulance ride is $5,000, or you know why you're being charged $3,000 to go to the emergency room, well, guess what? If all the hospitals around that area had to itemize their bills and show you and justify the $3,000 or justify the $5,000 ride, guess what's going to happen? people are going to say, wait a minute, that's not justifiable. So that's ridiculous. And if someone sees this billing system that's ridiculous, this is also the argument for education. Like, if I pay tuition and all I see is this is your tuition and lab fees. Well, why are my lab fees so much? Why do I have to pay so much per credit? You know? That's what I would like to know. I would like to see the justification for the cost. And if all universities, for example, were required to justify their tuition, if all hospitals were required to justify their billing, if all businesses were required to justify their profit margins, then guess what? A lot of people would see that, and they would start putting pressure on universities to bring that cost down. And they would put pressure on hospitals to bring that cost down. Right now, there isn't an incentive for that, because the billing system is a black box in all systems. I don't see the billing system that happens at universities. I don't see the billing system that happens at hospitals. I don't see the billing system that happen in at the DMV, for example. No one tells me that. I don't see the billing systems of pharmaceuticals. So, or even like buying a car. Why is a Ford Focus compared to a Ford Mustang? What's the cost of manufacturing that car? How much are you actually charging me? What is your upsell? Well, I don't necessarily think it's a numbers thing that much, 88 SLOS, because in my university days, our tuition went up regardless of the number of students. It's not that if one semester we had less registrations, there was no reason for the tuition to go down. The tuition stayed the same, and in many cases it went up. So they don't make that decision based on number of students registered, or that are admitted to their university. They really don't. So the problem to me is it has more to do with transparency. I've said this before in some other streams, and I'll repeat it again because I think it merits repetition. So I kind of went off on a tangent there, and I admit I've lost track of my initial train of thought. But the point is, you have these people promising all these things. Well, I'm sure if everyone stops going to college, they will lower the cost 88. I agree with that. But the thing is, that's not going to happen. Because you're always going to have a number of people that go to universities. They're going to do that. Instead, what needs to happen is you have to allow students to be informed. You have to allow parents to be informed. You have to allow consumers of the service or product to be informed about what's the cost of something. Why am I paying? Why am I paying for MacBook Pro? Like, if I get a MacBook Pro, why am I paying $2,500 when I can get an equivalent laptop and with equivalent hardware, another brand, different operating system, and I could get it for half that? Because you're paying for the brand. You're paying for that. And that's what I mean. It's like, okay, listen, I'm more than happy to pay for a brand if it's justified. And if they can justify that in their breakdown, saying, "Well, we use these particular materials, we use we put this much effort into research and design, we put this much investment into into the product," and that's kind of what I mean about that. Like, it would be nice if you could access these sort of reports on products and services. And I understand that that'll cause more overhead in companies and institutions to do so. I get that. But I think it's worth it at the end of the day. If you, especially nowadays where everything is digital, it's pretty easy to just put this information in a database. Honestly. Home ec? Do kids learn home ec anymore? I took home ec in middle school and learned how to cook and sew. Nowadays, many schools have eliminated that. 88. Yeah. A lot of classes have removed a lot of these vocational courses like shop, woodworking. I remember I had a class in like technical design in middle school. And home ec, I had to learn those kind of basics too. Yeah, cooking, sewing. I remember that. So a lot of schools just eliminate that because they put the seed in the mind of their students that, oh, you just got to go to university, get a career, whatever, you know. And it's sad. It's really sad because people don't have skills anymore. They don't have any real skills on how to do stuff. And it is pretty depressing. I remember schools having mechanic classes. I would have loved that. They had already gotten rid of that, in my schools when I was younger. So that never worked out for me, So it is what it is. Excuse me. Oh, I'm coofing now. That's not good. Uh-oh. So I think what we're gonna do is we're gonna call it a night. Because it's already about it's getting kind of late. And I need to decompress from this whole horrible debate. I want to thank each and every one of you for watching. I want to thank everyone that came along on YouTube, DLive, Twitch, and Bitwave, of course. Periscope, unfortunately, the people that were watching, they got just blown out of the water. So I want to thank everyone for watching. I hope everyone enjoyed the debate. I hope everybody didn't suffer too much. You step into the van. We gotta contain that. I wasn't coughing. I'm fine. I'm fine. I didn't do nothing. And once again, if you can support, great. Streamlabs.com/TheEternalAbyss. If not, it's great. No problem. But I will be doing a stream on Thursday, and as I mentioned, I do have an announcement that I'm gonna make on Thursday. So please tune in. Hopefully, I'll get this Periscope issue resolved. And Abyss, no way. Why me? What's going on? You don't want me to go? No, see, I wear my Hazy. I'm good. But I want to thank everyone for watching. No coof. I won't coof. I'm good. I won't coof. Who, me? Run against Cenk Uygur from the Young Turks? We're not in the same state. I can't run against them. So even if I wanted to, that wouldn't work. Yes, Meave. Salutes to you as well. I'll try and stay as safe as possible. But it's not always up to me. I mean, there's people in the world that don't understand the concept of putting your hand over your mouth when you're freaking coughing. I've seen that today, and it just pisses me the hell off, regardless of any coronavirus thing. But yeah. So it is what it is. You can declare you are a weeping willow tree with a chainsaw fetish? What? Just go to a golf club, you'll be safe. Golf course. Yeah, maybe. Maybe. I should hang out in golf courses. I should do a telecommuting from golf course when I'm working. But alright, I'm gonna end the stream here. Have a good night, everybody. Good night, kids. And always remember, don't be complacent. We need you to be active. Go out there, get out the vote, get out the red pilling. MAGA, we need Trump to be in office for another 4 hours because there's nothing more delicious than liberal tears. So don't be complacent. Have a good night, kids. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed my time here, and I hope you guys did too. All right.